You cannot help yourself.
No,
Hello. It is time for revolutionary change. I'm Jen Perelman.
I'm Peter Hager, and I am seriously having a light problem right now.
You're having some issues, so you have to wait till the last possible minute to join me. You know it causes me anxiety, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. Hello. I did see somebody comment that our link to Patreon isn't working. I did ask Colin in our private if that's something that he can look into. It just needs to be updated since we switched our account, switched our name. If you are new, welcome.
Colin, can you confirm that, please? Obviously, we don't want to wait on that if people are going to be coming on the show and potentially attempting to go to the site.
Because you look like you've got to adjust your blinds.
I did adjust my blinds.
It's got some issues.
I like when the sun goes down, but it's been a really rainy day today.
That's better. It's better.
Sure, Colin says it should work now. So the site will pull up right now. Guys, go over. Not saying that you have to sign up for it right now, but please go over to patreon.com/revolutionary change and make sure that the link works. If anybody could check it real quick.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
We appreciate.
Well, we appreciate all the help that we get from our group because we say we have a small but mighty channel. You know what? This lighting is terrible. So hang on one second.
This is my life. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about with you people.
You have a lot of problems with these people?
I have a lot of problems with you people. No, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of issues to talk about. And you know, we're just going to watch Peter walk around and adjust his lighting everywhere.
See how much better that is now?
Yes, it's called having lighting. Yes, appreciate it.
Yeah, but I like the natural light.
No, it's not good. It's not good. Okay, so we had sort of talked about what we wanted to speak about before our guest comes, but we didn't necessarily talk about the order of things.
Well, we definitely want to address what's going on down here in Florida. I know that we don't generally get to talk about too many Florida stories because Florida is kind of a spiraling death trap, to say the least. Wouldn't you, Jen?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There are a lot of times where Peter will want to talk about something that's going on down here, and I just have no interest in talking about Florida politics for a lot of reasons. Not the least of which is that my plan is to not be here long term, and so to focus on it like it's anything in particular as opposed to just what's going on everywhere just doesn't really suit. And also I feel like the demographic down here in a lot of cases just unfortunately gets what it deserves. So it's sort of like it's hard for me to be too concerned with with this particular location as opposed to other places that are in more need. Can you stop fussing around? Seriously?
I'm good now.
Seriously.
I think it's also impressive how well you're keeping your tan, by the way, but it is the summer, so I have to remind myself.
No, I got so much color in Ireland. I kid you not. And I know that it is not normally that sunny that often, but it really was when I was there. It was really pretty. I know that it is normally, there's a lot more rain and stuff, but I also don't think that people there understand what a Floridian's concept of rain is, right? So like to them, a rainy day is, if I could punch you right now, I would. Like I would reach through the camera and just punch. Yes, you.
What am I doing wrong?
It's so annoying. Just stop fussing with it.
I'm not fussing with anything. I was just writing something.
But like rain in Ireland is like what we would call in Florida, like a mist. It's a misty shower. Yeah, I'll give them the humidity. It's definitely, they've got there's a reason there's a lot of people with frizzy hair there. I've got that figured out. But I really was very fortunate and got a lot of days of sun, and I was burned. I wasn't prepared. Like I was not prepared to get sunburned in Ireland.
Jen, do your punches hurt?
That's how white I am.
Well, I Yeah. Well, no, I've generally
I'm
just not.
freakishly strong. I will tell you. He knows. I'm
Well, I
strong.
haven't been out in the sun too much. I mean, I had a beach day like a month ago, and that was nice. The beaches in the Gulf are a lot different than beaches in the Atlantic. Waters are warmer and calmer, I would say. So it was a good experience. I can get color. It just takes me a while to do it. And these are very busy days right now. And of course, as our channel continues to grow, forward to.
Okay, so I've known you now for how many years? I've known you now for about 10 years. About 10 years I've known you. Almost 10 years. And
Yeah,
you have never looked anything other than shades of white.
I've never really made an attempt to really stay colored, but then again, I've really never had the opportunity
Yeah.
to travel with my
Yeah.
country.
My point is I'm doubting that story of your color ability.
Yeah, well, if a white lady like
He's
Vic likes to say that I'm pretty white, then I guess you could say I'm pretty white, but that's okay. I can
because
accept.
I know I'm white.
Yes. No.
There were people who used to call me Casper in high school. I was
Well,
like, my skin can be see-through white, like white.
Well, I'm happy to say that I'm not Casper White, but I'm also not somebody who can't take the sun. Like I can be in the sun, I just can't live in the sun, which is good. There are some people who simply can't be in the sun at all, and I would hate to be like that. I would hate to be in that type of a situation. Speaking of the sun, speaking of what's going on down
Guys,
here,
let me know if Peter keeps breaking up. Let me know if Peter's breaking up or if it's on my end.
you mean in terms of connection?
Yes, your connection's not great, or at least it seems choppy. You seem choppy.
You seem okay.
But exactly, yeah. I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Well, what is
All right,
everybody?
what are we starting with? Is my point. Where are we starting with?
Colin says everything's
Nobody's
okay.
commented yet on.
Well, I've
Okay,
already
so
told
then
you
it's
where we
just
start.
me.
Yes, it is you. Oh, for once you admit it, it's your problem.
Well, I just can't ever tell. But I don't want to reboot and deal with it. So it's just the way it is.
So for those of you who obviously have been paying attention to what's going on down here, Jen lives about maybe 10, 15 miles from this so-called alligator Alcatraz that they are attempting to put in.
Of course it's named that, right? Of course.
Yeah.
Like if there is a way to make something into a brand and be able to market it in any way, that is the most American thing. Like that is just, you got to give it a fancy name so that it can be marketed well.
Well, it totally has to be
Yes, alligator Alcatraz.
That's a really great idea. We're dealing with a problem right now because our esteemed Congresswoman seems to be sticking her nose in the bullshit that's going on down here. Colin, can you please grab what I sent you earlier about the article with Wasserman Schultz? So I think a lot of people tend to forget that the nefarious nature of our sitting Congresswoman knows no bounds. Right now, there is this ICE agency, or ICE is attempting to build a prison, or if you will, or use a prison down here in Broward County. What people may not remember is that they have been attempting.
No, it's in Dade. They're down in Miami-Dade.
Are you sure it's Dade? Are you sure about that?
Where they're looking alligator Alcatraz, it has to be in Miami-Dade. It's right near Everglades City. Or is it on the cusp of Collier and something
No, I think
else?
it's off the causeway, heading westbound towards
Which yeah, in
Alligator Alley. That's Broward County. That's why Wasserman Schultz is over there.
no. That's not where it's not there. It's south. It's the one that goes through Miami.
Well, I think
it goes through Miccosukee. It goes through there.
I think the key point here is that they have been attempting to do this for a long time. There has been an attempt for decades to put a private prison in South Florida, Southeast Florida, and they have failed for one reason or another. One of the main reasons that they failed is because they once attempted to put it in a town called Southwest Ranches, which is the most affluent community in the congressional district that Jen was seeking to represent. Now, Southwest Ranches is not a traditional town. It's a hamlet. It's mostly estates. So I wouldn't consider it to be like a normal community. But years ago, they did attempt to put this private prison in conjunction with ICE all the way back in 2011. And who do you think spearheaded this effort? Well, it should come as no surprise to anybody that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the representative that attempted to spearhead this effort. Upscale Florida town and fight over immigrant prison. In one of Florida's rural enclaves where peacocks roam and horses' trails are as common as sidewalks, town leaders decided to bring in as much of their money from an unusual business, a prison. So you can imagine how crazy that is. And in one of South Florida's rural enclaves, only the leaders of Southwest ranches kept their plans quiet from residents for almost a decade. And the project has now ballooned. It has become even worse as a result today, but back then it was believed that this would be among the federal government's largest immigrant detention centers. The town would have to pay $150,000 each year to keep the prison, but officials say the town would turn a profit. The audacity of for-profit prisons is incredible. By getting 4% of what U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, pays the company operating the prison to hold inmates there. Now, you want to talk about the inhumanity that exists right off the bat? Many residents finally caught wind of this idea this year. Keep in mind, this is 2011. When the immigration agency announced a tentative deal, and they're angry. They held protests at public meetings, contemplated whether to recall the mayor before his March election, and whether to amend the town charter to make it easier for the city or make it easier to fire the city attorney pushing the deal. The objection over the prison has created an odd set of allies among the town's affluent residents, many of whom are wary of illegal immigrants, of course, and longtime activists who fight for immigrants, legal or not. The proposed facility is part of the federal government's new plan to move immigrants from jails to detention centers. It says are better for holding people with no criminal background. The centers are also supposed to be easier to reach for detainees, relatives, and lawyers. So we can keep going on, but the point is, if you scroll down, Colin, you will see, as you guys will see, that this is a plan. And yes, that's just a site for, it's a horse community. It's an equestrian community, is primarily what Southwest Ranches is, which is very close to where this detention center is being, the alligator Alcatraz being set today. So what I would say, and this is not really a selling point, in the latest version of the deal back then called for some 1,500 beds. Southwest Ranches could earn more than $1.5 million annually if ICE keeps the center filled year-round. So again, Jen, if you can talk about just what the whole inhumane concept of whether you agree with illegal immigration or not, or how it should be dealt with, if you could just address the whole concept of for-profit prisons and how absolutely insane and inhumane the concept actually is, that would be great.
Okay, well, that's true, but I'm just, let me put it out there. I'm against the whole concept of prisons the way we have them, private, public, or otherwise in this country to begin with. But yeah, the idea that there's a profit motive to incarcerate people is really just unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. The fact that the very people that literally profit off of it, people like my congresswoman, that those are the people that get to determine how many of them to build while they're profiting off of them is just, it's mind-blowing, really. And so I just found it very interesting that over the past couple of months, like since May, so like past month or so, my congresswoman has been seemingly such a fierce advocate against the ICE detention facilities and their inhumane treatment of people. And I find that very interesting. Is it because you don't stand to profit off of this particular facility? Is it because it's Donald Trump and not Joe Biden there? Make no mistake, things like this don't happen overnight. They don't happen overnight. This is something that obviously had been thought about, potentially created. The amount of research that goes into these types of facilities, it's more than a couple of months. That's a big thing. So logistically, it's a big thing. So, so does she care because it's Trump? Does she care because she has nothing else of substance to talk about? I don't know. But the hypocrisy of her being somehow leading the charge against inhumane detention is off the wall. Debbie, you are such a lying sack of, yeah, just so ridiculous. Oh, like you really care about those detainees, right? Like you care about the Palestinian detainees that are held by the IOF. Yeah, you care so much about detainees.
And don't forget, the second you turn it into a for-profit concept, there's an obligation or an encouragement to put people in prison in many cases for reasons that are not warranted for them to be there.
This is exactly what's happening with Stephen Miller right now. This is exactly what's happening with Stephen Miller right now. Somebody put it in the chat. I forget the name of whatever it is that he's invested in that's linked to the ICE detentions and the contractors and the different, like he is literally profiting per head and telling how many people he wants arrested. And yet we know that he's profiting from it. And this is like just normal now.
Scroll down, Colin, please. And so what you'll see here, guys, is keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. Let's see. All right. A little more. Okay, there we are.
Oh, wait, I see my former law firm associate commenting here.
Scroll up a little bit, Colin, please.
Of course, it has to involve a Polyakov.
Okay. I have been fully advised by our DC contacts that we should remain fully quiet on this one and to let our DC leaders help without sparking a fire that will make it more difficult for them to assist, wrote Polyakov. Jen?
Well, I don't know. I'm assuming that it's
Becker and Polyakov.
This was a while ago, so it had to be, it's probably still Keith. But yeah, Keith or Gary Polyakov. Continue.
Also a partner in one of the state's most powerful lobbying firms. Becker and Polyakov have been huge supporters of Debbie Wasserman Schultz ever since she entered politics.
Yeah.
And unfortunately has the distinction of having worked at that law firm at one time.
I did work for Becker and Polyakov. I had a good time there. I didn't have a personal issue there. I didn't have any problems with anything there, but I had a very unique situation there.
Hey, listen, you know what? A lot of it's like Israel. You know, a lot of things are like dangling under the surface before they eventually erupt to the surface. And then you get to see people for who they really are. And had a circumstance like that been going on, who knows if you would have tolerated any of that nonsense at the time, things change. So with that said, top Florida lawmakers in D.C., like DWS, the Democratic National Committee chairwoman, and U.S. Senator Bill Nelson, have written letters to ICE in support of the detention center.
There it is. And there it is.
The DWS in recent weeks has encouraged more communication with the residents. According to Town and CCA emails, Republican U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, it goes to show you how much these guys really are in it for life.
It doesn't matter what party. They're all in it together. So now she has a problem with ICE, but then she was in favor of ICE. Didn't she also recently vote to support them? Didn't she recently just promote or vote for that, whatever resolution was? What was that resolution they just had, like honoring ICE or whatever, standing in support with ICE? Like,
yes, there was like an ICE acknowledgement bill of some kind. And
yes,
Debbie
just a couple weeks ago, she just voted for that, and yet she's leading the charge against ICE detention centers.
Well, it's like the time
bitch.
well, it's like the time that I went to. Well, it's like the time that I went to one of her town halls at the Broward DEC, and the way that she took, first of all, when you're talking to a room full of very old Democrats, they don't know any better. They don't want to know any better. They know they've got one foot in the grave, and they just have accepted that this is the way it is. And Debbie's talking about, oh, we have this little amendment we're adding to Medicare called Seniors Have Eyes. And I'm thinking, this is...
Seniors Have Eyes. That's her big contribution to policy. Seniors have eyes.
Rather than saying, I support a single-payer healthcare system.
Never going to happen.
And you know who would benefit the most, honestly, from a single-payer healthcare system? Seniors.
Everyone.
Seniors in particular. Like, they wouldn't have to worry about Medicare Part A or Part B, or Part D. All of that's bullshit.
Well, no, it's very profitable. It's very profitable.
Exactly. But that's the point. So she preys on the ill-informed and the underinformed and the misinformed.
Well, who else? Yes, she preys on the vulnerable, whether it's elderly people, whether it's people that have to rely on things like payday loans. She will find a way not just to prey on them, but profit off of it every single time. Every one of these groups is a group that not only has she worked against, stood next to, but worked against, but also then profited off of the detriment to those people. It's really disgusting.
Well, she is a pretty disgusting person.
Oh, yeah.
While neighboring officials from Pembroke Pines have publicly expressed outrage over the secretive process while quietly signing deals with the town, not only promising not to interfere, but also to provide water service and fire protection. Residents say they are waiting to see the final deal. They have successfully fought off far smaller development efforts, including plans for street lamps and a toddler playground. Well, that shows you what the real priorities are. But what this says more than anything else is that when people have money and power and ways and means, they prevent things like this from happening. In a lot of these communities, especially in very disadvantaged parts of Miami, and believe me, Miami is the most inequitable city in the entire nation. So when you talk about people that have it and the people that don't have it, the people who don't have it really don't have it. Like they have nothing.
Well, and even more so as to where this alligator Alcatraz is. It isn't just preying upon vulnerable people. It's preying upon our most vulnerable people, right? So that's on tribal land. It's off of Big Cypress.
Yeah.
It affects both Miccosukee and Seminole tribes. And, you know, normally you guys know, I don't generally say we would take up a collection for the Seminoles. They're extremely well-funded, the ones down here. However, Miccosukee, not the case. And just in general, this is something that is just it's just a bad plan. It's a bad plan for the ecosystem. It's a bad plan for everybody except for people that profit off of detaining people.
Yeah. And that should come as no surprise to anybody that this is essentially what we're dealing with here and why this is going to get so much worse. We're living in the Hunger Games in many ways. Even though I've never seen the movie, I kind of have an idea of just why they are doing this. They don't want to fix these problems. They just want to amend them so that the profits continue. Why else would they do this? And yet, as I was saying to Jen earlier, the whole concept of the for-profit prison system in conjunction with why we are so dead set against illegal immigration. Listen, I'm against illegal immigration, but you never stop to ask yourself, why do we have an illegal immigration problem in this country in the first place?
Because we're bigoted and we don't like brown people coming here.
That's not what it is. The biggest
well, that's it. That seems to be what everyone's problem with immigration seems to be. So, you know,
so when people
it's always bigotry. That's what it comes down to. It's bigotry.
Can I please?
Yes.
So when somebody comes to this country from, let's say, who knows, say Guatemala, for example, how the hell do you think they get here? You think they have any ways or means to trek that far and get here? No, they're brought here in caravans. Who in the effing F do you think is supplying those caravans? Multinational corporations that want slave labor. That's who's bringing them here. That's who wants them in this country. And if you think that there is any other reason why they end up in America and why they would ever make it past what we effectively have is a border wall now, which we do have, and they're still getting here. So why are they still getting here? Because it's all a dog and pony show.
Because that's not how the majority of people that you consider illegal, again, the majority of people that you consider to be illegal came in legally. They came in legally and their visas expired or whatever the situation is. So the whole concept of the wall has always been and will continue to be stupid for stupid people that are able to easily be fearmongered to kick down to people that have less power than them. So the whole wall thing is stupid. It's always been stupid. It continues to be stupid. There you go.
I would agree. We are already in dystopia. That's not even a question at this point. I think we all have to realize, and you know,
the wall ain't helping people. It's not going to help.
No, listen, it's a big, beautiful wall, and we're stopping some people. We are.
Yeah, that's great. That's just friggin'
great.
No,
it's really great. It's really great. Look, somebody's going to be left holding the bag. And unfortunately, the working people of this country who always end up suffering as a result are the ones who are going to take it the worst. This should not come as any surprise to anybody. And I think what's being revealed right now in many ways, especially as we transition into what's going on with Zohran Mamdani, we'll obviously Kshama's going to be here soon, and we're going to talk about, the desire to run for office when clearly her best move is continuing to build her movement as a thought leader and as an activist, which I think she's done an excellent job of. And she obviously was a great city council member. But at the federal level, it changes significantly because everything is bought off. What I find very quizzical, though, when it comes to somebody like Zohran Mamdani, and Colin, could you please bring up the clips that I sent you with Hakeem Jeffries and Eric Swalwell?
Oh, we're starting out on the Rageometer.
The Democratic Party.
You would say Hakeem Jeffries, and I just start to feel angry.
Yeah, the Democratic Party doesn't know what to do with itself here. They are in no man's land. Jen and I have some theories in terms of what's going to happen. And I would preface this with, as hard as it is for people to believe, I know a lot of people think that the hardest part of the election is over for Mamdani. It's possible, but I could also see a scenario where it's going to become that much more difficult for him in the general election because now they know how serious this is. Yeah. And if you thought $35 million was a lot of money to spend during a primary, they'll triple or quadruple that in the general election. They'll spend $200-300 million if they have to, and make it a tenfold if they have to. That's how this is.
I don't think it'll work, though. I don't think it'll work.
Well, here's the thing. And here's where you have to, and we'll stop and play, but you guys will understand this because the supposed leader of the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries, had this to say regarding Zohran Mamdani.
Start with the big news, Leader Jeffries, out of your hometown. Mamdani won a big victory. Have you endorsed him yet?
I have not. We had a conversation on Wednesday morning. Where I congratulated him on the campaign that he ran, a campaign that clearly was relentlessly focused on the high cost of living in New York City and the economy.
But that's not good enough for an endorsement. See,
for the Democrat, for the person who just won your party's nomination, you're still not going to endorse him.
No.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, in case you're wondering, I don't have to pull the graphic, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with Track AIPAC. Hakeem Jeffries has taken, I believe, over $1.8 million in contributions from the Israel lobby. Now,
yeah, he's bad. He's like way up there on the horror meter.
Now, we've had some other guests on our show who have some very choice words for Mr. Jeffries that we cannot.
And that's the thing, is that we are, unfortunately, Peter and I, given earlier subject discussion of whiteness, are really not in the position that we would need to be in to properly go after this person. And so I refrain from doing so. But needless to say, I would refer people to like Sabby, I'm sure will do a good job. Tim Black will do a really good job. There's people that will call spades spades. Continue.
He outworked, he out-communicated, and he out-organized the opposition. And that's clearly why he was successful.
So what's holding you back from endorsing him right now?
Well, we don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap. I have never had a
subsidy.
In case anybody's wondering.
You're a fool. This man is a fool. You are making a fool of yourself, sir.
So I've got a little bit of a caveat here that a lot of you guys might not be aware of, but I'm sure you're going to love this one. So, as you know, especially with corporate Democrats, how do you know that they're lying, Jen?
Their lips are moving.
Hakeem Jeffries and Zohran Mamdani's districts do, in fact, overlap. Hakeem Jeffries is a representative of New York City, predominantly, I believe, Southern Manhattan as well as Brooklyn. I believe that's where his district covers. If you guys want to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's what he covers. Zohran won 68% of the vote of the areas that are covered in Hakeem Jeffries' district.
So he's literally lying.
In a big way.
Right. So this is something, obviously, I didn't know that the districts do overlap. So he is actually lying by saying that there's no overlap. And he's also lying when he says he doesn't really know him. No chance in hell. Zohran is a sitting assembly person who is in this man's district. There is no chance in hell that he's not very familiar with him and what he represents. So I'm sorry. Like this is just, this man is making a fool of himself just further. And the fact that he's willing to do it for like the powers that be is uber gross.
Much like the clip that we dropped earlier about Congressman Andy Ogles down in Tennessee, the GOP are much more overt in their Muslim bigotry. Whereas somebody like Hakeem Jeffries and the Dems, they tend to be more introverted about their bigotry. They try to hide it and placate to this idea of, no, it's not really this. Oh, it's really something else. But to Zohran's credit, he has backed the leader of the Democratic Party into a corner. He can't get out of it.
No, it's beautiful.
He's not going to be able to get out of it.
No, he looks like an idiot. Okay, so now what he's wanting us to believe is that this person who is the head of our congressional Democratic Party, who represents a district that has this person in their district as a sitting assembly person, and he's actually coming on here and saying that he doesn't know him well enough to endorse him, even though he just won his party's primary. You can't make this shit up.
And it's only going to get worse because remember, guys, these are the dog days of summer. You wait until we get to late September, early October, where the campaign kicks into high gear. I am still of the belief, and I think, Jen, you would be of the belief as well, that when push ultimately comes to shove, Hakeem Jeffries is going to support Eric Adams. That's
absolutely. Absolutely, 1,000%. They are all of these people. Anybody who takes money from AIPAC, first of all, and anybody who's a Democrat but has not endorsed Zohran, every single one of those people will be supporting every other candidate against him, be them Republican, fascist, whatever they are. They won't care. We know that. It's not even, they won't, in fact, they probably won't even hide it. They'll literally be working with a PAC and fundraising for PACs. And if you follow the strings, that will be supporting whoever the Republican is and or Eric Adams or whoever they're supporting. Yes.
Well, let's not forget also that the other aspect that does play a huge role in New York City politics that I do think is going to be a huge roadblock for Zohran is that Jeffries and the Democratic Party leadership are going to get all of the unions in line to back Adams. That's going to be a huge problem.
Well, I think there will be a couple of exceptions. I think there is a chance for a couple of exceptions. But yeah, unfortunately, for the most part, people like this asshat will call their union contacts and everybody will fall in line with whoever they tell them to fall in line with.
Well,
they'll stay out of it and won't endorse anybody.
That would be bad too. But think about it. So many of them got behind Cuomo during the primary. Now that you're past the primary, why would it be a stretch? Even though he is running as an independent, he's still the incumbent mayor who was a Democrat.
Right. That's what I mean. He'll get them in line. They will fall in line.
Absolutely. And maybe that's part of the reason why he did it. But keep in mind, the biggest reason why Eric Adams dropped out of the primaries because he was polling so terribly because he had competition and he's also dealing with scandal. But think about it. It's so much different, guys. Everyone was like, Eric Adams is polling at 11%. Well, now all of Cuomo's support is going to be manufactured over to Adams. All of the other party support, like the sellouts, like Jessica Ramos, is going to line up behind Eric Adams. Again, this is all about big city hall politics. If you've never seen the movie City Hall with Danny Aiello and Al Pacino, and John Cusack, that is a movie to go back and take a look at to understand. And this is 30 years ago, but it's still very relevant. That movie really gives you an insight as to how big city politics works. It's a very good movie. And so this is no different. They are going to protect corporate special interests at the risk of completely decimating the party in a city like New York. That's a fact. That's how this is.
Conversation with him, and so
nothing.
Just lying. People, and so this is one of those situations where let's say hypothetically that's true, that he doesn't really know him. Well, then he's a pretty suck-ass congressperson. I don't know a congressperson that doesn't know the state reps in their district and know them well and go to events with them and know exactly what they do at the state level. So if he's actually doesn't know him, that's pretty incompetent. That's weird.
And forgive me for my crude language, but I can't help myself. Eric Swallowswell is another congressperson who decided that he was going to go on television and state his case as to why he cannot support Zohran Mamdani and endorse him for the mayor's seat in New York City.
Stylistically, and I'm not a socialist, and I don't.
Oh, but here's the thing. Keep in mind, I'm not a socialist. That's very important. No one was, and you know, the other thing I didn't bring up on the other graphic, which I thought was very important, and this is the other thing, guys, if you remember about manufacturing consent, we saw this for the first time in our lives back in the summer of 2015, when what they were doing was manufacturing consent relentlessly for Hillary Clinton, because they were putting up how many super delegates she had, and they were counting them as actual delegates, showing it as an impossibility that Bernie could actually win the nomination. So they were manufacturing suppressing the vote and not getting people out there to actually support him. That was a big part of it. What you saw on the last graphic when Hakeem Jeffries is on the screen is that it's not New York City mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani, it's New York City's Democratic Socialist Mamdani. They don't even refer to him by his first name. So they're already manufacturing this idea of he is not worthy of this job. He cannot possibly be the mayor. Can't do it. That's what they're doing.
I don't associate myself with what he has said
bigotry.
about. Hang on. Stylistically, and I'm not a socialist, and I don't associate myself with what he has said about the Jewish people.
What has he said about the Jewish people?
I haven't heard anything.
This question keeps coming up. What has he said about the Jewish people? He said that
that's the problem. None of these talking heads, this one with a particularly bad bleach job, this one doesn't have any sort of like substance. None of these talking heads do to question that. So he gets to just say that like it's something that happened, and nobody pushes back and says, could you tell us what comments nobody says anything.
And that is a great point. Why do we care what Andy Ogles from Tennessee has to say about the mayor of New York City?
Honestly, little Andy?
Yeah,
little Andy?
Exactly. The only people that actually matter is the representatives of New York City. As we said, kudos to Alex for coming out in support of Zohran. It was extremely politically calculating, but it still helps. Our friend Gustavo Rivera, the state senator from the Bronx, he was with Zohran from day one. Kudos to him.
I also want to say, we're not being told about, but yet I know about a very sizable Jews for Mamdani group. He had a lot of Jewish supporters supporting him. And so somebody like this douche, like Swalwell, going on here and acting like somehow he's outraged on behalf of the Jewish people, it's tokenism, and it actually is kind of anti-Semitic. Why would you say that? You're acting to have what about all the Jewish people that live in his district that have been canvassing for him and want him to be their mayor? You think you know better than those Jewish people?
Well, I don't.
That to me is anti-Jewish to do.
Well, I also don't have the. Yeah, I mean, I don't have the numbers handy right now, but I can assure you that the numbers are absolutely staggering in regards to not just how well received somebody like Zohran is, but the negativity that is being thrown back at the Democratic Party now. Like I said, I don't need Zohran to get elected and do anything. He's already won. He doesn't even need to win the mayor's seat. He has created such a stir with the support from the Israel lobby. He has completely exposed how the Israel lobby has corporate captured both parties, period.
Well, they're basically Barbara Streisand affecting him completely. They're taking somebody and making him into a superstar based on how they're treating him and keeping it front and center what their bigotry really looks like. So everybody's getting to see that. Again, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And by the way, the reason that people like this douche come out and put themselves in this is because they're thinking about what they're running for next.
Yes.
That's the only reason that this piece of shit is getting involved in the New York mayoral race. Who cares what he thinks, right? Yeah,
And
these
keep
are
in
people
mind-
that need to
and-
get
and
on the
keep it-
national radar.
And keep in mind, one of the reasons why Swallowswell does something like this is because he had the audacity to run for president back in 2020 like an idiot. And in addition to that, here's a guy who is front and center with every stupid talking point from the Democratic establishment: Trump, Russia, support for Ukraine, obviously support for Israel. And little does anybody know, although maybe a lot of people do know, is that this guy was catfished by a Chinese spy. And apparently he was having some type of an affair of some kind with a woman who worked as a Chinese national, and he got caught. And you know what ends up happening? Kind of like with people like Lindsey Graham.
They get reelected.
Well, they get reelected. But you know, that ultimately is what ends up happening in these cases. That is more than anything else.
Okay, can I just give a shout out, because that was my baby Graham, and just so people know that's my little, and today is his 19th birthday. So happy birthday! Yeah, he had a gathering of friends over yesterday, but today is his actual birthday, which I actually think should be more celebrating me than him. But
yeah, with all the shit you've had to put up with over the years.
Well, just I have to like I told him I did most of the work.
You did do a lot of the work.
I did.
And if there's anybody that I think can crystallize this story for us, that can really bring it all home, we love James Lee from Breaking Points for Crystal and Sagar. And of course, He has his own channel, 5149. He really captured the essence of why this became a major story of Zohran actually winning, and why the establishment can't wrap their minds around the actual outcome from this race.
Never seen a coalescing of hatred like I've seen for Zohran Mamdani. It's actually quite insane what I've witnessed in the last 2 days. Republicans are calling for his deportation back to Uganda, and Democrats are melting down and quite literally willing to undo democracy to get rid of him. And I've been trying to figure it out all day, and I think this clip is why.
The first foreign visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first? Left to right, Ms. Adams.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo.
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, 2 of our...
Oh, get your head out of those people's asses. Look at this guy. Who is that?
I don't know who he is, but I could tell you that he clearly got about 1% of the actual vote.
Good.
So, hey.
He has his head right up like Netanyahu's ass.
Yeah. So what are you going to do now? What are you going to apologize for what you said and try to say? That's the other thing. That you guys got to remember, politics is a jobs program. These guys suck off whoever they think they have to in order to ensure that they're going to continue within the infrastructure. So somebody like this guy standing to the left of Cuomo is going to say what he's going to say because he wants to make sure if Cuomo wins that he's going to get a job in his administration. Talking about, I am making my 4th trip to Israel followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine.
Yeah. These guys are just ridiculous. It's just silly. Why are the New York mayors talking about going to Israel? Like, why?
What does that have to do with being the mayor of New York City?
Absolutely nothing.
Unless,
but you know what? They should all go there now,
and don't come back.
Right? Don't let the door hit
allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel?
What does that have to do with anything?
Nothing.
And why are they going only after him? It's
because that's what the donors, this is how this works. I mean, that's the thing. They have to appeal to, first of all, whatever network or stations donors need everybody to they need to swear allegiance to the Zio-Nazi state. Yes. But yeah, this is what this has come to, and they don't like him, and that's great. It just makes it so
wear it as a badge of honor. Wear it as a badge of honor, 1,000%.
Mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
Again, why does that question have any relevance to the mayor of New York City? Just because the biggest... Once again, and Jen, you've been adamant about this since day one, the conflation of Zionism and Judaism, that is the entire Zionist movement's goal, is to have no separation whatsoever. It just so happens that the biggest Jewish population in the world outside of Israel is in New York City. So what they're saying is it is one and the same, but as you've often tried to point out, no, it isn't.
Well, I mean, clearly they're just trying to bait him into saying something so they could continue to go after him. But it's really falling on deaf ears. I think most people are not falling for it anymore. Most people aren't buying it. And at the end of the day, most people don't give a shit. Most people are not concerned about Israel. The only people that they're only signaling to by doing that, yes, is a small elitist wealthy group of people that are voters and donors and owners of these stations. But in terms of like people that are out walking and his 40,000 plus volunteers that he's had like combing the city for him, they don't give a shit.
Good.
So that's the problem. Like this is only going to like, it doesn't work. And no, Israel does not have the right to exist. No nation has the right to exist. And I would love for somebody to say that. I would love for him to say, no, it doesn't.
Hey,
I would like, that would be so pleasing to me.
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not
As a Jewish state?
No,
As a state with equal rights.
he won't.
I mean, that if that's not the perfect answer, I don't know what is, because what are they going to say? No,
What, they're going to sit there and say that's not a Jewish state. Well, that he's anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
He
Not
won't
as a
say it
Jewish
has a
state.
right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very
And
clear
his
on that.
answer was no, he won't visit it.
Why does the mayor of an American city need to go abroad at all? And why did everybody except Mamdani say Israel? They don't want to go anywhere else, no other country, Canada, France, UK, South Korea. It's just weird.
Yes.
Oh, it's weird. Except we know why. It's not really weird.
No, it's a...
We could line up how much money all of those people have taken or have been promised by the Zion Nazis to comply.
Well, haven't they been promised? Well, that's the whole thing about, and you could talk about this better, Jen. The whole idea of being raised in an environment where you are told that you are the chosen people, and if you are indoctrinated with that from basically birth, and as you never question it, and not only that, it's not just that you're raised to believe that you're the chosen people, but anybody who knows anything about specifically Zionist Jewish communities, they are extremely insular. They do not have people from the outside. If you go to a place like Aventura, Florida, you will see that they're all the same people. They all congregate in the same places. There is rarely any outsiders. They're all the same. And it's probably the same in parts of obviously Brooklyn and parts of Chicago and parts of Los Angeles and parts of Miami. That's how this is. And that's how
I mean, yeah, this is where we are now with these people.
But I do believe that the armor is cracking. I believe that we are heading towards a shift, and we are going to cover that shortly with Kshama Sawant. And that, of course, is going to be what happened over in Glastonbury over the weekend, which was unbelievable. I mean, and the reaction to what he did is completely on brand.
Another Barbara Streisand effect that they're doing. Another example of them drawing attention to the exact thing they were trying to avoid drawing attention to. You know, they had decided to black out, I guess, the rap group that came on after the duo, Bob Vylan. So what he knew that they were being blacked out. So he took it as an opportunity to get the message out. And now them making such a big deal of that, they're actually making it a bigger deal than had they just not blocked it out in the media, because people like me are now interested in this. And I would have never even really known about it. You know what I mean? Like, so they're imploding. Their narrative has imploded.
Remember, if you guys are here and if you are new, Please make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you hit the like button so more people can see the stream. Make sure that you share the stream if you can. That would be tremendously appreciated as well. And if you are
people,
I'm going to run our people in a second. If you are so inclined, please make sure that you go over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. Our understanding is that the site's working now fine. So please, if you haven't already, make sure that you go over and become a subscriber for as little as $5 a month. You could be a supporter of our small but mighty and growing channel. One of the things that I do want to throw out to you guys as a suggestion, Jen and I are definitely at a point now where the channel is growing at such a rate, and we have a major announcement to make. Our channel, as crazy as this is to report, considering how long it's taken us to grow, on the very last day of the month of June, we have officially passed 1 million views for the entire month. So it's a testament to stick-to-itiveness and, believing in the mission. Is that a word? What was that?
Is that a word?
Stick-to-itiveness? Yes, it is a word.
Stick-to-itiveness?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a word. Well, you going to test me on that one?
No, I'm just learning.
And so I think we've come a long way, obviously. I mean, as I said, there was a period over the course of basically 2 years where we only gained 1,500 subscribers. We've had days now where it's grown that much. For comparison, as Colin just dropped in the private chat, our channel prior to this month had an entire 5 to 6 million views in its entire lifetime. So it's the dawning of a new era for us. We are extremely gratified that we have gotten to the point that we've gotten to so far. But obviously, there is a lot more work to be done. And we are very appreciative of each and every one of you that have been here, that have helped us out. And so we, of course, would like to acknowledge Sajid Nasir. Thank you so much for the $4.99. MTG attracts Muslim voters at times, but drops the ball with anti-Sharia posts. Consistency matters. Yes. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we will get to later this evening, is an example of an America First nationalist. There is a difference. And not that when it comes to ending the genocide in Gaza and ending Israel lobby's stranglehold over our country, sometimes you have strange bedfellows in politics. But Marjorie has been extremely consistent on this issue, and we have to give credit where credit is due. And the fact that she has been adamant about this country, and particularly her party, the GOP, being attached to the state of Israel. So credit where credit is.
And yes, she's a bigot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
She's like a complete this is not somebody that I would ever want to have anything to do with, personally. It's just gross. She's a total bigot. And yet, if she's gonna, be out there resisting her own party and resisting getting involved with a war in Iran and resisting sending money to Israel, then yeah.
Piano Man, great to see you. And thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Every amount counts and makes a tremendous difference. Pedro Ordonez, thank you so much for the $5. I lose my appetite every time I hear Debbie Wasserman Schultz's name. I have stood in Wasserman Schultz's presence on multiple occasions. You can imagine what it's like. What I will tell people that have never been around Debbie gives off an incredible amount of negative energy, to the point in which I have heard people say that I feel evil in her presence just being around her. So if you think it's tough to hear her name or see her face, trust me, in person, it is that much worse.
It's not good.
Brett Boyle, our trusty mod, thank you so much for the 2 Canadian A. This atheist stands with the Holy Land, Palestine.
Yeah.
I definitely concur on that one. S. Kolachuk, thank you so much for the 5 Canadian A. Stick-to-itiveness is a word if you're an American. Otherwise, it is not a word. You mean ain't in the American? Well, that's actually not how I would spell it, but nevertheless, in the American language, we do have certain words that we make up like ain't. Ain't is not a real word, but we use it as part of our vernacular.
Yes, but here's the thing. When it comes to verbal, vocab, it's I'm pretty solid, right? I was one of those, I had Rain Man type of score for my SAT because I had a 700 verbal and a 400 math. So if there's anything I know, it's not stick-to-itiveness.
Well, I did much better on the math than I did on the
exactly. So there it
right?
is.
Is that true? Brett Boyle, thank you so much for the 2 Canadian. They love this channel and the community. We appreciate you as well, brother. Donald James, 19 months. Thank you so much for being a YouTube member. Don't give MTG and Tucker any credit. If they want to caucus with us on one issue, then fine, but I am not going to caucus with that. Hey, listen, you do what you got to do.
Understand.
That's fine.
Who said anything about caucusing? You're getting all heated.
We're jumping up a little fast there. But
I'm just saying, I didn't even hear. Who's talking caucus?
Well, that's the thing about politics, is that people need to accept the fact that you can only succeed in the world of politics if you break bread with people that you do not agree with, as long as they are on the same mission. And as I've said time and again, I am only breaking bread with people in politics that are not bought and paid for by corporate special interests. I do not care what ideology you fall under. If you are willing to fight against the very fabric of why the system is broken, then I'll fight with you. I may disagree with you on a multitude of issues, but at least I know I'm dealing with somebody who's on the up and up and is not speaking on behalf of a corporate donor like Eric Swalwell and Hakeem Jeffries. That's the difference.
No, but with Marjorie Taylor Greene, is she's just a bigot who believes that Jews have space lasers.
Well, she's not exactly on the level in terms of her brain.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Ranker Tanker, thank you so much for the $2. But did you hear this one? 2/5 free Palestine. Indeed. P.S. I like your channel. Thank you, Mr. Jack. And if you like our channel now, I think you're going to like our channel even more, because this is somebody who we have wanted to have as a guest for quite some time, but obviously she leads a very busy life as both a former city council member and, of course, as an activist who has done a tremendous job of bringing attention to the very issues that are not only a great concern, but has a track record of proving that if you actually challenge corporate power, and to me, there is very few in the world that have more corporate power than Jeff Bezos and his monopoly that is Amazon. But if somebody who has taken him on in the city that they have dominated for pretty much a generation now, if you think about it, it goes without saying that Kshama Sawant, who was a city council member from 2014 to 2024 in Seattle, had an incredible impact then. She has an incredible impact now, and we are very pleased to welcome her to Revolutionary Change.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's nice to meet you. I've been a fan for a really long time. I've been following you for, it seems like, years now. So it's really nice to finally meet you. I appreciate all the work you've done.
Thank you, and likewise.
Thank you.
So what's been, if you could take us through kind of like your odyssey politically. Obviously, you ran for the city council over a decade ago. And was it as arduous a journey as it ultimately became around, 2018, 2020, where things really start to heat up? Did they try every which way to keep you out of the city council when you first got into politics?
But our first election to the city council, which was in 2013, happened in a way where we were very, very small as an organization, the group of socialists that I was organizing with. So the ruling class, the Chamber of Commerce and the Democratic Party, which rules the city and also is the sole representative of the ruling class. I mean, there are Trumpian people here, but and more so now in the last few years. But at that time, it was entirely democratically dominated. And even now, they're all Democrat in name. They're just more conservative now than they used to be. But at that time, also, it was a very conservative city council. And the guy, Richard Conlon, the guy I ran against in 2013, he actually voted against paid sick leave for workers. That's the kind of nice guy he was. And when we ran at that time, most people couldn't name 2 council members because out of the 9 council members, because why would you know anything about the city council? They don't know anything for you. They are mostly engaged in their wine and cheese meetings with the Chamber of Commerce. They go off, they literally used to go off to this retreat at some resort, which we put a stop to because we publicly exposed it. They used to go there on the taxpayers' dime. Can you believe it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So when we were running our campaign in 2013, they certainly were extremely hostile to us, but they didn't think that we could win. And to be honest, when we launched the campaign, we didn't think that we were going to win. We launched it because it was important to do so, because, you know, remember that was in the wake of the Occupy movement. I had been very active in the Occupy movement, and we had won certain small victories through the Occupy movement, but it was very clear that there was a huge opening to run a campaign that could demonstrate what does working class politics actually look like. And it is not so much about elections per se, but it's just that at this moment where there's, you know, the militancy in the labor movement is in such shambles, everything is starting at its infancy. Election campaigns, if you are willing to use it the way we used it as revolutionary socialists, they do offer a vehicle where you can demonstrate what does it look like for you to be a fighter for the working class. What does it look like to use the campaign itself to build movements, and what does it look like to use your elected office as a working class representative? And so we demonstrated all of that. We used our 2013 campaign as a vehicle for the $15 minimum wage, for building momentum for that. And in fact, the Seattle Times, which is not my fan, they wrote that after I was elected, that if anything, this election victory that we had was a referendum on the $15 minimum wage, because if people were voting for us, they were voting for $15 an hour. They were voting for taxing the rich. They were voting for rent control. And so when we took office in 2014, and I use the pronoun we deliberately because I used my office to build a movement, and therein lies the power. The way you strike fear the hearts of big business and their political representatives, whether Democrat or Republican, by being a revolutionary socialist elected in office, is you understand that you are not going there to better administer the capitalist state. You are going there as a disruptor of the capitalist state. And by definition, the parties of capitalism, Democrats and Republicans, regardless of their differences, they represent the capitalist class. So by definition, they're on the other side of the class divide. They are not your colleagues. You don't go there to be collegial towards them. I mean, to the extent that they're willing to support you, yes, you invite everybody to support you, but your loyalty lies with the working class. That's the approach we use. Now, to your question, Colin, about, you know, did we face this the vicious opposition from them from day one? Yes, we absolutely did. In fact, even before I took office, there was an article in the local left newspaper, The Stranger, where anonymously some council members had said that having me in City Hall would be like having a mountain lion in a grocery store. I mean, I have no idea what that looks like. I haven't seen a mountain lion in a grocery store. But, you know, they were apoplectic at the idea of a socialist in office. But at that time, they probably thought that with a mix of a carrot and stick, you know, by a little bit of flattery, a little bit of, oh, I like your engagement ring and all of that, that they could cajole me, or that they would put the fear in me by intimidating me. So, you know, they tried both with me. Just to give you one example, a few weeks after I took office, actually, two of the top corporate Democrats came to my office, sat me down, and told me in no uncertain terms that it was well and good that I had roused the rabble and gotten elected, but that City Hall was running on their terms, and that I was not going to win any minimum wage increase, let alone 15. And less than 6 months later, we had won 15, and those two had voted for $15 an hour. And we also won inflation increases. That's why today, Seattle's minimum wage is the nation's highest at $20.76. I'll just end by saying, compare this to the dismal record of AOC and Bernie Sanders, who have not managed to win anything, including $15 an hour.
I think that the biggest problem with Bernie and Alex in particular is that they don't understand that you cannot effectively make change in politics unless you take substantial risks. And they are not willing to take risks. For whatever reason, they want to play it safe, or they want to go down the road of basically being hated. You were willing to incur the wrath of one of the richest men in the world. And I'm sure he has a dartboard with your face on it that he constantly throws darts at, because he cannot stand the fact that he is Dr. Evil. You know, Jen, you do have that great graphic. I think Kshama would love that one.
Okay.
You know,
I have a graphic.
Your guts, I think, is what makes you different than others. And as you could see, this is Bezos. Like, that's who he is. He is an evil bastard. And he has, and that's another thing I would ask you to share with people, because if you've been in Seattle for a long time, you've probably seen the downward effects of what having Amazon's headquarters and any Amazon major distribution centers, how they absolutely can destroy these local working class communities, how they make them effectively impossible for people to afford to live there. And over the course of a decade representing one of the most affluent cities in the country, I'm sure you learned quite a bit about that during that time.
Yes, absolutely. And Amazon obviously looms large in this city, but it is a city of big business. I mean, let's not forget the Starbucks headquarters is also in this city, T-Mobile. There's many corporations that actually grew here and all have their headquarters here. And the Chamber of Commerce, I use that as a shorthand because that's like the sort of the overall representative of big business interests. And yes, you're right that it is these big corporations that rule the roost, and working class people get screwed over year after year. And also many struggling small businesses, they are not able to get by. But I'm not talking about medium businesses. There are lots of businesses who say they're small, but then you ask them how many people they employ and how many branches they have. They're like big businesses. Talking about very small, struggling storefront businesses, they struggle under the skyrocketing commercial rent, which is also like residential rent, which is also skyrocketing. And so it's basically unlivable. It becomes unlivable. And that is why our minimum wage increase was so crucial, because it meant the transfer of wealth of many billions of dollars over the years from the bosses to the workers. And this goes directly to your point, Colin, about why this cannot be done these kinds of substantial victories. I'm not talking about crumbs. I'm talking about substantial victories for the working class, substantial reforms for the working class cannot be won on the basis of, we'll just, somehow we'll get an agreement with big business. We'll get agreement with the Democratic Party establishment. We'll somehow find peace with them. And therein lies the flaw. There is no such thing. Capitalism is a zero-sum game. If the bosses are making profits hand over fist, that is not coming from the ether or because of their hard work or intelligence. It is coming because they are robbing workers of the fruits of their labor. And if workers win a measure of justice through minimum wage increases or taxes on the rich, like we won the Amazon tax, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars every year to fund affordable housing, that money comes from the profits of the bosses. Now, granted, for them, it is like pocket change. But the point is that they are never going to willingly part with their profits. No, they're going to go to war against you. And as a matter of fact, the paramount thing to remember here is that capitalism fundamentally is posed as class warfare against the working class. Whether we like it or not, that's how it is. So the choice we have is not, should I be affected by the class war or can I step out of it? No, there is no corner in the world where you can step out of it. Your only choices are, should you roll over and die or should you get organized and fight back? And so I think, we have used our 10 years in office to always put that message forward. But what we have shown, and this is very important, there's a narrative. And again, even with Mamdani's victory in the primary, many DSA types are, trying to put forward this narrative that the only way you can win, quote unquote, is by being agreeable to big business. And so it's correct for Mamdani to be saying, I'll work with Governor Kathy Hochul. I'll convince billionaires that a rent freeze is in Bill Ackman's interest. It misses the point that actually it requires you to go into battle. And that means that it does do what AOC actually, in a moment of honesty, she said that if you did what I mean, she didn't reference me, but she was referencing this type of fighting strategy. And she said that if you do that, where you expose the Democrats for their own rottenness, you're not just talking about Trump, but you're also talking about the Democrats, that causes, in her words, reputational and relational harm. That is what we're talking about. So ultimately, if you don't understand that you cannot, your priority or your preoccupation cannot be to build congenial relationships with the Democratic Party, then you are going to betray the working class. And so I want to define victory not just as winning elections, but as winning for the working class. AOC and Bernie Sanders have won their elections, but they have won nothing for the working class. They campaigned on $15 an hour, Medicare for all, Green New Deal. They have won absolutely nothing. In contrast, we have relentlessly used a fighting strategy, and we have won 4 elections. I won all my elections on the city council. That doesn't mean we guarantee people that we will win, but what we have shown is that you can win, and you can go into halls of power, not get marginalized, and you can win for the working class. But here's the key. You can only do that if you use your office to build mass movements. And it is those mass movements, it's the mobilizing and organizing of thousands of working people. That is what scares the ruling class and the Democrats. And that is what forces them to concede when they get exposed, So I use my office to expose them, expose their true role as business representatives, not as working class fighters. That is what it took. And in fact, a corporate landlord lobbyist actually said it well. I mean, he hates what we stand for, but he gave us a good compliment. He said that the reason we won unprecedented renters' rights, and we have won incredible renters' rights, and the corporate landlords lost, according to him, was what he called, quote unquote, Sawant's army. That's the key. If you bring the army of working people against the class war from the ruling class, you can win.
So let me ask you, and as somebody who ran 2 very service-oriented campaigns, I very much appreciate the concept of using your campaign to further the mission, win or lose. You're building up a network of people, and you're building coalition, and you're also serving the community, and all of that I agree with 1,000%. But have we ever seen an example of someone actually getting into Congress that has ever been effective in really doing this, let's say, since the 80s?
I don't believe so. And in fact, actually, if we win this election, which obviously it's going to be an uphill battle, this is going to be an almighty fight, because we're up against the Zionists, against big business, corporate landlords, and the war profiteers, and the Democratic Party, which is going to go to war against me, as they always have. But I would say that in reality, it would be dramatic and historic if someone like me got elected. It's not about me, but it's about my politics. A revolutionary socialist has never gotten elected to U.S. Congress. And even in Seattle, when I was first elected in 2013, I was the first socialist elected in 100 years to any office. And I don't believe any revolutionary socialist was ever elected to city council before me. And so, there is a first for everything. It is going to be unprecedented. And that's exactly why I'm glad you asked the question, Jen, because that's exactly why the Democratic Party will absolutely not tolerate and will go to war against us, against our campaign, because they have seen our example in Seattle. We are not going to go to US Congress and say, oh, okay, I'm going to now coalition with AOC, whatever. We are going to straight up build movements nationally to win victories for working people.
And it's like you go in there, and let's say, first of all, we know that anybody that's in there is a capitalist supporter. That's just the way it is. Doesn't matter. They could be a member of whatever progressive caucus or whatever. They're all a bunch of nonsense. So at the end of the day, you're one of, how many yourself people that are really standing up. I mean, there's some other interesting allies that don't take corporate money. There are definitely those people. But at the end of the day, and something I've been saying, and I hope this gets to Bernie and Alex, I really do. Take the AIPAC money. Take it. You're doing their bidding anyway. You might as well take the money. It's like you don't get to rest on laurels of not taking corporate money if you're still doing what they want you to do. It doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they do that. That's an interesting point you raised. They do that. The progressive Democrats are a crucial component of keeping the Democratic Party on life support. I mean, if you look at the Democratic Party, its approval ratings
They are
so
on life support right now.
It's
No
MIP
two ways
resistance.
about
They need the faux resistance. That's all it is.
Yes, they need the four resistance, and then they play the Democratic, the progressive Democrats. They not only have sold out in the sense that they have not fought for any of the demands that some of them anyway, most of them don't actually raise concrete demands, but like AOC and Bernie Sanders who have actually raised concrete demands. Not only have they betrayed on winning any of them, they play a much more insidious role, which is continually, perennially bringing working people back to the Democratic Party by giving people a little tiny bit of hope here and there, occasionally, throwing out crumbs of hope, like the Fight Oligarchy tour. They're not actually building a movement for winning anything. They have not actually called for, they could be doing, I mean, just to give an example, concretely, what they could be doing is call mass rallies for Medicare for all. And it's not just about mass rallies. They could do what we have done, which has been a critical component of why we have won, is they could be using their office, as I did, to call out the specific Democrats who are an obstacle to winning Medicare for all, and challenge them and say, I'm going to bring this bill to a vote right now. I want a discussion in Congress right now. I want an up or down vote. I don't care. See, they never do this. Since the time of John Conyers, 25 years ago, they've been bringing some incarnation of a Medicare for all bill. And now, again, Pramila Jayapal brought forward a Medicare for all bill. But that is with the intention that it is never going to go anywhere. Right. However, if they didn't do that, if they didn't do their fig leaf type of campaigning where they bring out a bill, but they don't do anything. They talk about something, but they don't do anything. They do fight oligarchy, but they talk about it in general terms. Then they perpetually keep people locked in this whole false debate of Democrats versus Republicans, and keep the debate limited. As Chomsky said, the best way of corralling people is to limit the debate, but then act as if there's lots of debate within those limits. So, constantly criticize Trump. Of course, Trump is a absolutely horrible human being. He also represents the billionaire class, and right now he is presiding over the genocide. But the reason Trump got elected even once, let alone twice, after he left office as the most unpopular US president in modern history, is all down to the Democrats. The Democrats are the best builders of Trumpism and right-wing populism, and the progressive Democrats play a very crucial role. And that is why they will support the genocide in their own way without taking AIPAC money. Because see, if they took AIPAC money, it would be very clear. It would be very nakedly obvious which side they're on. Instead, they play this shell game where they don't actually take AIPAC money, but then you will see Pramila Jayapal also voting for the Iron Dome. Then you will see AOC voting present, and then later saying, oh, she regrets that, and then recently saying she will vote for the Iron Dome. You'll see these games being played over and over again, but that's with the idea of confusing people.
That's our job, to call it out consistently, because I find it infuriating. And I have said before that I actually find them worse. For exactly that reason. It's like, you're just a facade.
I became president because I'm a very important, very popular person, and they love me. That's the bottom line. That's the big deal. You seem like a lovely person, but you have no chance, so don't waste your time. I know what I'm talking about. I'm the king, and that's the way it's going to be.
I think he represents us perfectly, quite honestly.
Oh, he does. Trump is America.
I cannot think of a better representation of American empire than Donald Trump. I think it's poetic.
Well, speaking of American empire and the person that you are running against, this is your opponent. Adam Smith is one of the most, you don't really hear about him because he kind of keeps his mouth shut for the most part, which is probably good on his part. But he is one of the most corporate-owned representatives, Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. The guy is as filthy as you can possibly be. And of course, he has taken, on paper, $500,000 from the Israel lobby. He has taken a hell of a lot more corporate money from the likes of Amazon, Boeing, probably Starbucks, and the like. So he is the definition of a corporate politician. Forget corporate Democrat. The parties don't really matter in this instance. So what can you share with us about Adam Smith and why you believe that you have at least listen, you've You've won plenty of elections before. So clearly you had to go into this at least knowing that you at least have a puncher's chance of being able to pull off an upset if you raise enough money and have a strong enough ground game. So what led you to the point of wanting to run against this particular person? And what is it about this man that made you decide that, yeah, we have to go forward with this?
I mean, first of all, in 2023, I'm sure you heard, I co-founded this national organization called Workers Strike Back, because we strongly believe that the politics, the political strategy, the fighting ideas that we brought forward in Seattle and put to fruition so effectively year after year, defeating big business and the Democratic Party again and again, defeating the billionaire class. And as Colin, you mentioned, Jeff Bezos himself again and again. We believe that this strategy needs to be used nationally. And that's why we launched Workers Strike Back, which is a fighting organization. And it was always the idea for Workers Strike Back to launch fighting campaigns, because we had no interest in launching yet another organization on the left, which is a do-nothing organization, which refuses to actually fight the Democrats, which speaks in abstract, but then doesn't concretely fight against them, fight against big business. So we wanted to demonstrate what we did in Seattle just on a wider scale. And the intention was always to run for launch campaigns, including runs for office, that will allow Workers Strike Back members and the wider working class to concretely campaign on issues that matter to them. And so that's why, obviously, needless to say, we wanted to launch campaigns to help build a fighting anti-war movement. And clearly we needed a campaign that will bring forward our demands to end the genocide and all US military funding to the Israeli state and end the brutal occupation of Palestinian lands. And it's important that we run for Congress for that. And Adam Smith is the 180-degree opposite of what I stand for. He is a warmongering Democrat. He is a general in the warmongering party. He is not a foot soldier. He has backed the genocide to the hilt. This genocide, this Holocaust of the 21st century, he has backed it to the hilt. He's among the Democrats and Republicans who have given relentless tens of billions of dollars to the Israeli state to carry out this genocide. And this is after all the hundreds of billions of dollars that Adam Smith and others have already given to Israel in the last 30 years. I mean, the guy has been in Congress for almost 30 years, and this is his track record. And it's not just about Gaza. I mean, he obviously has the blood of over 400,000 Palestinians on his hands, according to the estimates from the medical journal The Lancet. He also, in 2002, voted for the Iraq war. I mean, so he is one of the 5 sitting Democratic Congress members who voted for the Iraq war. So he has the blood of 1 million Iraqis on his hands. He has not met a war he didn't like. He supported the wars in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and also the ongoing bloody proxy war, inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. And, as the genocide has unfolded, he has demonized anti-war activists as extremists, as left-wing fascists, as totalitarian. I mean, these are quotes. And he has called for them to be arrested. And none of this is a surprise because of his whole warmongering track record, and also not a surprise that he is bankrolled by weapons industry profiteers like Palantir and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. I mean, he's a darling of the AIPAC and Zionist lobby. And, and just to give you a sense of the difference here between me and him, in the summer of 2014, my first year in office as a city council member, I used my office not only to actively attend protests against Israel's indiscriminate bombardment on Gaza at the time, but also to draft a letter to Obama and US Congress to end all US military aid to Israel and also end the illegal settlements and the occupation. At that same time, what was Smith doing? He was enthusiastically backing the Israel's Iron Dome system, which, as we know, is not defense. It's a key component enabling the Israeli state's slaughter apparatus against the Palestinian people. So that, that's an example. Another example is in November of 2023, my last month in office, I was winning despite the Democratic opposition. We forced them to vote yes on our resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and end to all U.S. military aid. At that time, this was the strongest resolution, and it was the second resolution in the nation. And at that same moment, Smith was part of Biden's cabal that was monstrously insisting on over $100 billion of military funding for not just Israel, but also Ukraine. All of this while American working class people are struggling with a cost of living crisis. I mean, I would need several hours to talk about this guy's wonderful track record. But as you also alluded to, he's also your good old lead corporate Democrat, during the George W. Bush presidency, actually. And this goes to also what will be needed to defeat Trumpism and right-wing populism. During the George W. Bush presidency, Smith was pushing for the Democrats to go further rightward and reduce the contrast between them and Bush and the Republicans. And he also thought at the time that the Democratic Party should consider privatizing Medicare. And so it's no surprise that corporations like United Healthcare, which ferociously oppose Medicare for all, are his habitual donors. And of course, he called for the bailout of the big banks. I mean, all of this shows that this is what U.S. Congress is. I mean, Adam Smith is a poster child for what U.S. Congress is. And lest anybody think that, but he's a Democrat, not a Republican. Smith has received campaign donations from Elon Musk's SpaceX PAC, not once, not twice, but in every election cycle since 2010. He has already, for next year's election, he's already got the maximum donation from Alexander Karp, the CEO of the dystopian corporation, Palantir. So, there you go. Oh, and by the way, I should not forget to say Adam Smith also voted to create ICE.
Oh, you're muted.
Shocking. I am not surprised at all. In fact, I am. Since you've brought this up, Kshama, I think it is important that the audience sees. To the founders of Palantir, there are two of them. There's Alex Karp and there is Peter Thiel. And if you don't know, we have always said that W. Wasserman Schultz is a lizard person. Well, Peter Thiel is a lizard person as well. And I'm going to prove it to you right now.
For the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
this is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
this. Should the human race survive?
He's got to think about that.
He's got to think about it.
Well, he's a lizard person.
Well, do I want to kill 5 billion people? I kind of do.
Maybe I kind of do.
I think the world would be so much better off.
Oh,
I mean, when people would complain about the whole concept of eugenics, but I don't think, Kshama, that people truly understand, and I know that our friend Osama in the chat was mentioning about the issues of AI. I don't think people truly understand just how devastatingly dangerous Palantir really is and how inherently evil these tech billionaires really are. Like, they do not have a humanity strand in their entire DNA. Like, it doesn't exist, which is why he can be asked something as preposterous as, do you think the human race has the right to survive? And he has to think about it. Yeah, I'll let you know in a little while. I mean, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yes, this is I had not seen this clip before, and it is it's not surprising, but it is jarring, to see how deeply disturbed these individuals are. But obviously, as I'm sure you'll agree with me, we can only make sense of this not from analyzing their psychology. Obviously, psychology and sociology has a lot to do with capitalism, in the sense that the system is so rotten that the people who are at the top, the multi-billionaires, it shouldn't be surprising if their psyche, their thinking is deeply dystopian and anti-human even, and very, very self-centered and narcissistic and extremely disturbing. It shouldn't be surprising. But what the point I'm trying to get at, though, is that those social phenomena, psychological phenomena, are outcomes of a deeply rotten system itself. And so ultimately, in order to make sense of what he's saying and why he is the way he is, I think you can only explain through the lens of class and of capitalism. And so ultimately, what he is talking about, and why it takes him so long, is not that he is putting his own or his fellow billionaire's survival in question. It's not like it's some sort of neutral academic question for him, like, oh, should we, I'm not sure if we should all just, I'm just, it's not like it is just the random academic nihilism, like, oh, should we all just be blow up, or should some of us should we live? No, it's a very class oriented idea that he has, which he's not admitting, but it's our job to parse through that. And what he's really showing is his complete and utter disregard for the vast majority of humanity. But he certainly wants the billionaire class to survive. But that's the extremes to which capitalism takes you, where when you're at that level, you actually completely lose touch with the rest of humanity, and you think that you are, all the narcissistic tendencies come to the fore. And that's why I think it's very important not for us to not get locked into the psychology, but to understand the systemic and the class aspects of this. It is also why Alexander Karp, the current CEO of Palantir, he speaks in a similar way. He is, if you hear him speak, which I'm sure you guys have, he positively delights in the slaughter of the Palestinians. Now, his actual words are, oh, well, they're terrorists. But that's bullshit, because people ask him, but what about the 100 children that are getting injured or killed every day? What about women? What about elderly? It's like those words don't penetrate his whole, his whole atmosphere. Like, he inhabits a world where those things don't mean anything to him. And that is why it was appropriate that the Asian Times, for example, summed up Alexander Karp when they said that Karp is building the operating system for perpetual war. This is what they are doing. They're, as you said, they are using AI and other technological advances for the most grotesque ends. And this is why I'm a revolutionary socialist, because we cannot fight this and make capitalism a little more just, because it is actually going on the deep end in a much worse way than it was 20 years ago, and not to mention the climate crisis. And so ultimately we need an actual system overhaul, and that is why there is no escape from needing to overthrow capitalism, which also means that it has to be a system where billionaires don't exist. The individuals can exist, but a billionaire class cannot exist.
Well, I think we're heading in that direction. And if you think it's bad,
you're preaching to the choir with me, friend, because I've been telling him Peter thinks that we need a hybrid system. Like, there is no hybrid system. By definition, capitalism is against the interests of the majority of people. That's just how it works. It's designed for that. That's the whole point. Hence the capitalist part of that. Like, you're like talking Jews for Jesus, man. It's Jews for Jesus.
We need a political revolution in this country, and we're going to deliver it. I promise this time I'm going to be more serious than I've ever been before in my life. I promise it's going to happen this time.
Do we have to finish watching this?
We have to finish what the psychopath has to say.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's so pathetically little. And okay, we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. But you also need to transform your soul, and you need to transform your whole self.
You cannot convince me that this guy is not a lizard person or that he's inhuman. I don't believe it. I believe that he is some type of a creation of some kind, because there isn't a human emotion in that person's body. In fact, I have seen plenty of instances where it looked like he was trying to physically jump out of his skin. It looked like his face was pulsating, that the lizard was trying to jump out. But the scary part is, and Kshama, the reason I brought up Peter Thiel is because you are fighting the fight that needs to be fought. Whether you win a congressional seat or not, you are targeting the very people and entities that are actually creating this hellscape of a world that we're living in today. When people get caught up in the red-blue divide, when people get caught up about what some dumb representative had to say on TV or some minute issue that affects 0.001% of the population, if you are not talking about the very people that are controlling the global economy and destroying billions of lives, like Peter Thiel, you're wasting your time. And that is why your focus has been so important in this left populist movement. And so we can only hope, win or lose, that you are going to continue this fight, and a fight that we hope we can help facilitate on your behalf.
We are. In fact, we have alongside our congressional campaign, we have also launched another campaign for a ballot initiative in Seattle, in the city of Seattle, for free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich. And as many of your listeners might know, we are already won the Amazon tax, which raises hundreds of billions of dollars for affordable housing. We are proposing that tax be raised to $5 billion a year to fund free healthcare for everybody. I think this has to be the starting point. And the reason we are doing this is because of our earlier conversation that the Democrats don't have any intention of ever doing this. They don't have any intention of ever winning anything, let alone Medicare for all. And so if you learn lessons from other countries like Canada, which do have public health care, what they've shown is that you can win in a one area, one province, as Canada did in Saskatchewan, and that becomes so popular that it puts the fear of God in the capitalist parties. In Canada's case, it was in the Tories, in the Conservative Party. They realized that the public health care that Saskatchewan had won through militant labor action was so popular that if they didn't actually carry it out nationally, that there would be much more of a rebellion. So in other words, all of our approach is a revolutionary approach to winning historic reforms. And ironically, it makes sense that revolutionary socialists make the best winners of reforms, because we have the analysis to understand what it takes to win. And so, yeah, we are building a fighting campaign. We have a real chance to win, but we need people to understand that this is going to be a big fight. And so this is going to be the fight of our lives, because it is literally revolutionary socialism against capitalism. This is how this fight is posed. Working class people are interested in our campaign in a massive way, because we are fighting to end the genocide and also for free healthcare. I mean, we have campaigned throughout the district, and it is both the demands are extremely popular. We're also calling for national rent control, but it's not just in the district. This campaign is popular throughout the nation among working class people. We have Worker Strike Back members in multiple cities who've been tabling and phone banking, talking to their co-workers, their fellow union members. And this campaign is extremely popular, and working class people are smart. They don't need to be explained that actually, even if the campaign is in Seattle, this is of national interest. Because imagine if we can send a working class fighter to US Congress, that will completely upend US Congress. I mean, just to give a comparison, just in the city of Seattle, when we won $15 an hour, the Seattle Times, again, as I said, they're not our fans. They said that we will get credit, appropriately so, for coming out of nowhere and commandeering the political agenda of the city. That is what we did. It is not only about this or that reform, which we won so many that it would take too long to list. But what we did beyond that was we completely upended the politics dominated by the Democratic Party. That is what we need in US Congress as well. And that is how we can win victories also. I mean, just to add one last thing. I mean, people, well-meaning people say, well, I understand, I support you, but what can one Congress member do in US Congress? And our response is that the problem is, the question is not what can one Congress member do in the US Congress. The problem is that we don't have even one Congress member right now who can do anything, who is willing to do anything. That's the problem. So even with one, we can, in the words of the Seattle Times, completely commandeer the political agenda. How? By using our office to do two things. One is to build mass movements, actually calling mass rallies, mass marches, protest action, civil disobedience, bring out rank and file union members, put pressure on the Democratic Party tied union leadership to come, to bring the union force into the struggle. And number two is to name and shame the Democrats and Republicans. So actually going to Congress and saying, Chuck Schumer, you have blood on your hands. Nancy Pelosi, you have blood on your hands. Hakeem Jeffries, you have blood on your hands. I'm just giving an example. This is how we exposed the Democratic Party in Seattle. We said, we didn't go, when we built movements, we didn't have thousands of people coming to City Hall and say, please pass 15. No, we said, shame on you for not leading on this. And if you vote no, you will be exposed as a corporate shill and you need to be thrown out of office. We will campaign against you and we will throw you out of office. So creating actual, real, concrete pressure on Democrats and Republicans, of course, but the confusion lies with the Democrats primarily, creating actual pressure on them to, for their own careers, creating fear for their own political careers, because these are all rotten careerist politicians. And one more thing it has to say, and it goes to your point earlier, which is that just to remind everyone, in West Virginia in 2016, Bernie Sanders, with his campaign, which we strongly supported, won every one of the 55 counties in West Virginia in the Democratic primary. And what happened? The Democratic establishment crushed his campaign. Hillary Clinton was the nominee. And then in the general election, Trump won West Virginia by 68%, I think. And Hillary Clinton won like a quarter of the percentage, 25%. Absolutely abysmal performance. That really shows you that working class people can be won over even if they have voted for Trump. But the main thing you need to keep in mind is the class divide. So I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to make peace with Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson, but I do want to speak to the ordinary working class people who may have illusions in Trump because they are correctly angry at the Democrats selling them out. So that's why I urge everybody to go to chhamasawant.org. That's my full name with no spaces or anything. chhamasawant.org. That's our campaign website. If you're watching this and if you are inspired, we need you to get involved. We need you to donate to this campaign. This is a working class campaign, and we need you to campaign with us no matter where you live.
So how'd they get you to finally run for this? You are someone that there is, because clearly people have been asking you to do this for a long time. So, so why now?
Yeah, I mean, it's as you probably know, Jen, it's never been a personal question, because if it was personal, then I would never run, because
yes, because it's a nightmare. And why would somebody subject themselves to that?
I don't mean exactly. Yes, it is, but don't mean, for me, it's more like because of being an introvert, it is a difficult thing to do. But politically, absolutely, it's a necessary thing to do. And you have to take on that fight. And if you are going to lead working class people, whether you are an elected official for the working class, or you are elected in the labor movement, or you're not elected, but you're leading social movements or even the labor movement, I'm trying to say that in all avenues, doesn't matter which avenue it is, if you have leadership in the working class that is not willing to do what I did, then you get the working class getting sold out over and over again. So what I'm doing, what I'm trying to explain is that what I have done is not meant to be uniquely just for elected elections. It is not about electoral work. It is about what kind of leadership does the working class need, period, in order to win victories against the bosses. It's a much broader question. Elections merely happen to be a very fruitful avenue, have been for us, for 10 years. We were on the city council for 10 years and we won 4 elections. They're not always the most fruitful avenue, in fact. And the bottom line is that office would have been no use had we not built mass movements. Ultimately, it is the mass of the working class getting into action and fighting back. That is what wins victories with or without elected office. I mean, the Vietnam War was ended under Richard Nixon. He was not wanting to end the Vietnam War. Roe v. Wade was passed under Richard Nixon. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, was formed during Nixon. It wasn't because he supported any of these things. He was a reactionary Republican. Those victories were won because ordinary people and rank and file union members moved into action, carried out strike action. It was also the rank and file active duty soldiers who refused to take orders from their commanders. All of this was necessary to end the Vietnam War. That is the kind of almighty resistance we are going to need to end the genocide. Our election campaign for US Congress against warmonger Adam Smith is part of that movement. In addition to that, we also need dock workers and other workers to go into strike action, shut down the profit machine, refuse to transport weapons or load weapons on the ships. That is the kind of action we will need to end the genocide.
Couldn't agree more.
Agreed.
Yeah, Maersk, as was reported by Democracy Now!, they have refused to continue shipments to Israel. Listen, it is a failed state. It is a dying state, and we are eventually going to sever that relationship. It's going to happen. It's not a question of if, but much like the Democratic Party, it has been completely exposed for the hypocrisy and downright depravity that it is, as is the state of Israel. So it is upon us to continue to boost leaders like yourself who are speaking truth to power, who are definitely putting themselves in harm's way, because there is no question that there are people who are out to get you, and you are still willing to fight the good fight. So we will do our part to make sure that this gets out to as many people as possible. The links are in the description, guys. If you can go to Kshama's website, chip in, follow, support, share it on social media. Every little bit counts. Obviously, the election will be coming up next year. Washington is one of 3 states. It's very unique. It has what's known as a jungle primary. So it is the top 2 candidates that will make it to the general election. I will, knock on wood, assume that you and Adam Smith will be the top 2 candidates. So it's going to be a race to the finish line, I believe, next summer. So with that said, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. We hope you will return. And obviously, thank you so much for all that you do, Kshama.
Thanks, Kshama.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all your work. And yes, I'm happy to be back anytime.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you both too. Take care.
Bye.
Great lady, and obviously, like I said, does go out of her way to put herself in harm's way, and she doesn't mince any words. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. She's just willing to say what needs to be said, and she's willing to be hated. And if you're willing to be hated, then that means you're doing something right. And that's the difference between Bernie and Alex versus Kshama. Bernie and Alex are not willing to be hated.
They're not revolutionaries.
That's it.
They're just not.
And she's worse because Bernie at least has a track record of actually trying to fight for stuff, even though it was obviously futile for the most part. But she's very career-oriented and calculating. Kshama's like, hey, listen, if I win, great. And Kshama's attitude, to her credit, is just like Jen's. If I get to Congress, I'm going to be the biggest pain in the ass that anybody has ever
Oh, no,
seen.
she would be too. No, she would be.
Yeah.
She would be. And look, I have my, my skepticism about how any of that really works in practicality. It's all good in theory to me, but I don't know.
Yes.
And again, there's no prior, we don't know what that looks like because we've never seen that before. So we don't know what that looks like. I mean, the closest I can get in my mind is like Paul Wellstone.
Talk about long time ago. And
hey, we
have to, but Kshama brought up a good point about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson. And obviously we'll transition into that now. I think people need to really understand that when you have an opportunity to seize on a moment, the biggest issue we're dealing with right now is I sense an opening to break the Israel lobby stranglehold over our country. Zohran's victory, we've been talking about Zohran for months. And the fact that he was able to break through, I think in many ways is symbolic of why the ideology, and at least its stranglehold over our country, is going to break. And when somebody like Tucker Carlson is using his platform and Marjorie Taylor Greene is using her platform, whether you support them politically or not, and are using it to speak out against the state of Israel, that is very powerful and can be very impactful. And here's what they had to say. First, they had to speak about the state of Israel, and then they even gave kudos to Zohran, interestingly enough.
Since I've become a member of Congress since 2021, we have voted on 22 resolutions for Israel, 22 of them. All kinds of resolutions, denouncing anti-Semitism, supporting Israel. We voted on 22 of those. We never vote on resolutions proclaiming great things about America or defending certain Americans or defending Americans in general. But we have voted on 22 resolutions in the House defending Israel.
How many of you?
So
that's crazy. It's so insane.
The other thing that you have to remember, and this is where I would argue with Marjorie, is to say, if you really believe this, and I don't doubt that she does, then why are you not fighting for the very policies that would rally as many people behind the concept of, let's say, single payer healthcare, for example? Like, that would be an example of truly turning a corner. And it does seem that Marjorie is the type of rogue politician like a Thomas Massie who could fly in the face of the entire, neoconservative ideology.
But again, the problem, and it's a hard one to overlook, is that she's a bigot. And so I'm like, I kind of get, it's like, I agree with you, Donald James. They're not on our side. They're not on our side. They have no intention of being on our side. However, if they can use and are using their platform in a way that gets our side what we want, even if it's for totally different reasons. I mean, she's just a bigot and has this America First nationalistic kind of psychotic agenda going. But if she's willing to push people and fight against supporting Israel, then that's a good use of her space and her platform. So yeah, no, I do not think they're on my team. There is no universe where she and I are on the same team.
No, but this again is
broken clock's right twice a day.
Yeah, and this is a case where the broken clock is frozen on the time that we need it frozen on. That's the other thing.
You voted yes on?
I don't know my exact record. The last one I voted no on, and then the one before that I voted present because I just started getting sick of it.
Well, that's kind of it. I mean, I've always noticed this, certainly in the last, I don't know how many years it's been, a while, where Republicans in the Congress are, always talking about Israel. I'm not against Israel. I've always liked Israel, so haven't really noticed it. Okay, fine. Love Israel, love any country, whatever. But it feels like something has changed. Like, why? And clearly it has for you. What is that thing?
Well, I think here's the situation. It's coming to a point where it's so obvious all the time in everyone's language, the social media posts they put out, the statements that they make. They have to proclaim Israel. They have to proclaim their faith and loyalty in Israel and how they, Israel is our greatest ally. And it's a statement that has to be made over and over and over again, to the point it's becoming like, wait a minute, what about our own country? What about our own people?
It's kind of like going to church and constantly telling yourself that, Jesus is coming to save us during my lifetime and, things like that. I'm just putting that out there. But as I've often said, the biggest thing about Israel and why it's going to fail is because not only can they not hide what's going on in Gaza right now, but it is in everybody's face. It's in everybody's face. And they are expecting you to be loyal to a foreign nation. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for anybody who knows politics, knows for a fact that she has substantially large political ambitions. Despite what she says, despite what her intentions may be, that people think they know, that she's just going to sit in Congress for 30 years. I don't believe so. I believe she has every intention of running for the U.S. Senate and becoming a much bigger power player in the political infrastructure. So I think she's looking ahead and she senses that the breaking down of the state of Israel is really happening. And if she is at the forefront of that, especially as the MAGA movement evolves past Trump into what will hopefully become more of a fiscally conservative anti-war party, then she has the opportunity to lead it. And I get the sense that that's her calculation. Do you surmise that that's part of her modus operandi here, as far as
I've never found her to be that bright. I've never found her to be particularly bright. So I don't know that she puts that much thought into a lot of stuff. I don't know who she works for. I don't know who she gets her money from. I don't really know much about her. The few things I've seen are bigoted and stupid and ignorant. But the fact that she's willing to stand up to people in her own party says more about her than anybody that's on the Democratic side of things. But yeah, I mean, she don't impress me much. Now, I don't know whether or not she'd be able to win a statewide race. I don't know. She seems like the kind of person that if given enough like rope will just hang herself. But what do I know?
Yeah, well, no, I don't think anybody thought she would get to Congress. But then again, you know, she's a smooth operator. She's calculating just like AOC is, no question.
And we have so many problems here in America, and we talk about this all the time. $37 trillion in debt.
You see, when you start talking like that and you don't actually understand how the economic system works, that's where Jen is right, where she says that this person is not intelligent.
No. She's just spewing talking points that are her standard talking points. She's got her this is not somebody that can think outside of whatever her parameters are. She doesn't like that. And I don't know who gives her talking points because I don't know who funds her.
Well, I wouldn't suspect her to be the type of person that really has too much of an independent thought process on her end, as far as just randomly coming up with stuff. I mean, she's probably fed things, but I don't know. She's probably very off the cuff, I suppose. It just, when you
I
say...
I think that she likes getting a rise out of people. I think she likes the sensationalism aspect of it. I think she likes that. She likes playing the game. And that's fine. Maybe that suits her. I don't know.
And if you're not going to distinguish the difference between the debt and the deficit, then again, you really should not be talking about this. If we have a trade deficit, let's say, and you're concerned about the ability to have well-paying jobs stateside, that's fine. But when you talk about debt, you're not actually addressing why the so-called concept of debt exists. It's a question of the government prints money, or the Fed, however you want to look at it, and we, the taxpayer, have to pay taxes to avert any type of serious inflation problem. Instead, they're still under this notion of we, the taxpayers, are in massive amounts of debt.
They need that narrative, and people like her love that narrative because it helps them rally their people. They get people angry about where their tax dollars are going. They get people angry. The problem is they end up directing their anger to the wrong people. People like her encourage kicking down, and that's the problem. She doesn't stand for helping like oppressed people or working people or regular. She has no concern about that. She's just a white nationalist. So again, it's like, you know, but if she wants to use her platform to convince people that follow her and that support her, that supporting Israel is bad, I'm with that.
Just like you and I were speaking before, our kids' generations. My kids are 22, 25, and 27. And our children's generation, they can't afford rent. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford insurance. They can't buy a new car. They can't find a good paying job. They're living month to month, paycheck to paycheck, credit card bills stacked up. And they literally look to the future going, how am I ever going to realize the American dream? And it seems...
Well, you would realize the American dream if you supported tuition-free trade schools, for example. If you supported a single-payer healthcare system, these individuals would not be dependent upon their shitty-paying job to get some form of health insurance. It would just be available. Hence, there would be more of a libertarian-type system instead of an authoritarian-type system, where the individual liberties would be much stronger because they would have their health. They would have the ability to learn a skill. These are the types of policies that people in the 14th Congressional District of Georgia should be talking about with their representative. If Marjorie truly cares about these things, then these are the types of issues that should be talked about. I'm not
she
saying
doesn't care. Marjorie
maybe she doesn't. But that's what she needs to be confronted on. Marjorie, you're saying great talking points. This is how you actually solve those problems, but she's not going there.
The problem I have with her and people like her is they come from a place of anger and hate. They do. They give off a vibe of, I'm so angry, but the problem is not at the right people. And that she rallies and bases everybody. She uses fear. She uses anger. She uses drama. She's not sincere. You don't get a sense that she actually really cares. And I just find her to come off as like angry and hateful. And I think she appeals to angry, bitter, hateful people. So that's the problem. It's not it's not my preferred method of representing.
I agree. We'll finish it up.
It's hopeless for them. But then in Congress, everyone is chasing and pursuing and proclaiming their loyalty to a foreign country.
The problem with Marjorie also that doesn't get talked about enough is that she commits a hell of a lot of insider trading. I mean, a lot. Like
That's what I'm saying. So her motives have nothing to do with, morality. Her motives have nothing to do with that. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't have praise for her.
But what's interesting is what they said regarding Zohran. Now, of course, they're not technically supporting him, of course, but here's what they had to say.
That guy was the only person in the New York City mayor's debate to say he wanted to focus on New York City. All the candidates were asked, if you could visit a foreign country, what would it be? And they, of course, all had an answer. I think most said Israel. Great. And he said, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stay in New York. And like, if I want to meet Jewish constituents, I'd go to their synagogues, their homes or whatever, but I'd be here in New York because that's what I'm doing. I'm running New York. That's my job.
Well, he gave the right answer.
He gave the right answer. He gave the right answer, at least. And he's talking. I totally oppose his program.
Absolutely.
Oh, God. Wait, let's get that in there, you elitist piece of shit. I totally oppose his program. Oh, my God. Free transportation, oh, my God, groceries for people. I can't have that.
So if you agree with Mamdani that New York City is unaffordable to live in, and of course, if you were to line up the top 4 reasons why you cannot afford to live in New York City, the first is cost of living, also known as rent, which people can't afford. Number 2 is the cost of food, which is out of control. In fact, that Greek billionaire has been exposed for being one of the biggest price gougers and not tax cheats, but a wage theft cheaters of his employees. That's just one example. So Zohran wants to bring a government-funded grocery store. He only mentioned one. Maybe he brings like this one giant grocery store. Maybe it's
actually my understanding is it's 1 per borough, so it's 5.
Borough. Sure,
it's 1 per borough is 5, and I only know that because Lee Camp did a little thing about the horror of that. How horrifying that would be to give people subsidized groceries that otherwise can't afford food. We don't want that. We can't have that.
No,
let's not be ridiculous.
Number 3, transportation. Transportation is out of control, and transportation should be subsidized in New York City. In fact, they've been attempting to fix the problem by having what's known as surge pricing, so that people do not run the congestion into the city, which is a huge problem. And as a result, they bitched and moaned about it, but ultimately people ended up taking a lot more public transportation, taking the subway system. And that is something that, again, should be the cost of doing business in a city like New York City.
That's not radical, by the way. That's not radical. There's places that had that. My understanding was California used to have that. Like, there's places that have had free transit. That's not like a crazy concept, by the way. It's amazing to me how things seem so radical when there are things that actually used to exist here until the people convinced you that you're not worthy of that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take it away and then charge you for it. and people believe this. It's like, I'm telling you, we have like we're delusional.
And then the 4th one, of course, is healthcare, which is probably the biggest crisis of them all. And of course, in the state of New York, which should have the New York Health Act tied to federal funding, that's the only way it would work, as Steve would probably attest. At the end of the day, you have the Democratic Party establishment that is standing in the way of passing the New York Health Act. Who knows what an impact somebody like Zohran will have as the New York City mayor in pushing the initiative for a New York Health Act.
And don't get me started on that. It was hard for me to not talk about MMT to some extent with her regarding the idea of the healthcare in individual states, let alone an individual city, and how that is not the best way to go about it. But I didn't want to I'm almost scared for Steve to see this.
We'll see how he reacts.
Yeah. I don't think it works, but he's talking about economics.
Yep.
And everyone else is talking about foreign policy. Why is it hard to talk about economics, domestic economics?
Because they have to be swearing their allegiance to Israel.
And they have to be swearing their allegiance to corporate special interests, which the GOP does as well. So the corporate Democrats, as Kshama was saying, makes it very easy for Trumpism to become a mainstay in politics, where you don't even have to address whether you're going to do anything. You're just going to thumb the eye of the scumbags that are of the ultra-liberal class that believe they always know what's best for everybody. And we all know that they do not. And so do I think that there is anything that you can really write home about in terms of the conversation that took place between Marjorie and Tucker? Probably not, in the sense that they're going to look to really be on our side, you know, in terms of these types of policies. But if we can get them to continue to push forward on the issue of Israel-Palestine, then that is a tremendous win.
It is, because their audience, the fact that their audiences are getting exposed to an anti-Zionist sentiment, and to just see how unbelievably absurd it is, the amount of our policy in our Congress, in the People's House, that's discussed about Israel more than any other, like, people need to know that. And I do think that that's a good idea, that people do know that information. And so far, what I've seen is she's done a fairly decent job not conflating it with Jews. So, you know, so far seems kosher.
Well, when Marjorie puts out tweets like this, you know that she's a fearless person, that she just doesn't care. And that, in many ways, as unlikable as she can be, you got to give it to her. She's willing to say that Israel killed JFK. That's a ballsy thing to say, whether you like it or not. But she's willing to say it.
The fact that she's willing to, like, put out in a post the you know, combining JFK's assassination with the state of Israel's nuclear program is very bold.
Yes. And nobody, I mean, listen, I honestly can't really think of any other congressperson. And this again gets back to the whole idea of feigning support and love and fealty towards Bernie Sanders and AOC. Do you think they would ever put out a message like this?
No.
Even if it's
they
true.
Voted for Israel. They voted for Israel. That's the thing. Like, there's no getting around it now. It doesn't matter what you say if what you did was vote to give money to Israel. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And but a lot of it is theater. There's no question that a lot of it is theater, because if you're not getting other people to go along with you on these core issues, then it's kind of irrelevant. But I also believe that it's going to become, and that may be true. USS Liberty says that Mossad and CIA used LBJ to take out JFK. Hey, listen, if you look at JFK's policies towards Israel and you look at LBJ's policies towards Israel, it's not hard to put two and two together.
No, and I always say it's like it's almost like Occam's razor, which I know Rachel loves that I told her what that is, but it's the concept of the person with the most to gain is usually behind whatever that was that gets them to the position that they're in, right? And so I always looked growing up at, well, who had the most to gain? Vice president. Without even knowing the story, the background, the policies, whatever, just think it through. I mean, that's just how it works. The person with the most to gain is usually a person that's involved in the situation that gives them what they have to gain. It just makes sense. And, you know, he wasn't even supposed to be in that position to begin with.
Then Bernie should have never pretended that he wanted to be some type of a political revolutionary.
He never did, to be fair. He's never been a revolutionary. Bernie's a reformer at best. At best.
If there is a president in history, there have been two presidents that do not get and again, most political scholars that write about the history of presidents are of the liberal bent. That is a fact. And if there are two presidents in history that never truly got their comeuppance for just how sheerly terrible they are, and in my opinion, two of the very worst that's ever served, Woodrow Wilson and LBJ. And they never, ever properly, historian-wise, get the treatment that they so rightly deserve. And while people can say that there were a multitude of issues that, domestically speaking, LBJ did, led, of course, by Medicare, that is part of his legacy. It is. But you know what? Vietnam is the legacy of forever, of officially starting forever war. That's what Vietnam was, and he started it. And every war since then, in many ways, has been tied into Israel. And that one in particular is one that we knew was on their behalf. And it doesn't matter because you can claim that it's about communism and this. No, it's about controlling natural resources around the world. And communists do not want to do business with the West. Can you blame them necessarily? Not really. Our way of doing business is to shoot first and ask questions later.
We prey on everybody. We're bullies. We're bullies. And the rest of the world is just sick of our shit.
Yeah.
And they are creating all different types of networks and coalitions and all sorts of things because they don't want to play with us anymore. And the thing is, not only do I not blame them, I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them. I don't need to live in the country that's the world's police. I don't need to live in the country that controls everybody else's economy through bullying, sanctions, boycotts, threats, all this crap. I don't need that. I don't need to live in the country that has 800 plus military bases around the world. I don't. I see how people live in other countries who don't have that. They seem good. They're good. They have their issues. We have our issues, but I'm good. I am perfectly okay with my country not being the world hegemon. I prefer it. We're not doing such a good job. So, I think if we were doing such a good job, the world would be in a better place. The answer isn't more wars, more police, more weapons, because if that was the answer, we'd be the safest place in the whole world. And we're just not.
You sure would.
So that is not the answer. I know that what we're doing isn't working.
Well,
and maybe a place like China that spends the same amount on education that we spend on our military, maybe they're onto something. I'm just saying, maybe they're onto something. Maybe other countries are onto something with how they prioritize their people. That's all. And we might need a little bit more of that.
Leave it to one of the best thought leaders of all time. And this is a clip that even I had not seen until today, but this will be a great segue into our final topic of the evening.
Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists.
Start this again. I don't know why it starts like that.
Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part.
Why would they? Because again...
names matter, and that's the thing. How they label things is how it matters. And that's how they control the narrative. That's the propaganda. I always say one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
And vice versa. If you guys were paying attention over the weekend, and I'm sure that you did, and I'm sure many of you saw our post from earlier today. Look, I'm not familiar with Bob Vylan, although obviously I'm very familiar with him now, and I'll listen to some of his music. And maybe
again, Barbra Streisand effect, man. He's going to do really well now because I never thought. I don't think I even like that genre. Aren't they punk?
Punk rap is what.
Yeah,
they
that's
are.
Okay. So it's like two categories of music that I don't particularly like merged together.
Thing. But what I will say is that anybody who knows anything about Glastonbury and this music festival that happens once a year in the summer. Springsteen had an amazing show there back in like 2009, I believe. Yeah, whatever. But it's one hell of a music festival. And hundreds of thousands of people over the course of a few days end up showing up to this event. And so Bobby Vylan, because it's a two-person group, and he got on stage, and this is what he had to say that really got the crowd going.
Free, 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 free. All right, but have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF, death, death to the IDF.
And what is my one issue with that statement?
It shouldn't be a D, it should be an O. And why is that, Jen? Please explain to me.
Well, I feel like, we have to, words matter. So the IDF stands for Israeli Defense Forces, and they've not defended anything. There's nothing defensive about them. And they're so offensive. They're occupiers. So that's why a lot of people that talk about them use IOF or whatever. And I know that's a small thing, but it just sort of bugs me. Anyway, continue.
Well, he certainly made an impact.
Oh, and I love that he did this.
Death to the IDF!
What, Jen, don't talk while it's going.
Sorry.
Now, please continue.
Okay, this is what I was going to say. I don't know if I tried to tell you that I don't know about this or the other, or Kneecap, the group that was on after them. I sound like such a boomer, but the thing is that they knew that they were going to be blacked out by the BBC, that group. And so because they were going to be blacked out by the BBC and he wasn't, or this duo wasn't, he took that as an opportunity to do this in particular. Not that he wasn't on the same page as them, but it's, you know what? Courage inspires courage.
Well, I think that works. I think Mario.
Yes, it does. It does work, but it's still like, it's just, yeah. Anywho.
Death to the IDF! Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine
will be free.
Will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Hey,
inshallah.
If you've got the body to rock it out there, baby, it's...
Oh, he looks delicious. Again, not my music, but he's really cutie poo. But I just, you know, the death to the IDF is literally the equivalent of death to Hamas.
Yes.
In their mind, not him, but in the minds of the people anyway. So, and that's the parallel. And anybody who tries to draw a different parallel saying that it has something to do with Israelis and or Jews, either of those, that's taking it to where you're crossing into being anti-Jew. And that's not the case. What he's saying is very specifically true. People that are in that death force, and specifically more and more so, but really much since at least the first Intifada. I mean, there could be an argument made that in the very early days, people were there doing all sorts of different stuff in service, and it wasn't a whole bunch of rabid, violent animals that need to be lanced like a boil off of society. But now the people that are in that cult, yeah, these are deathmongers. This is like Gestapo, Nazi, SS. Like these people play games targeting humans.
Colin, pull it back.
Not regular people
first.
These are not normal people. So saying death to people that are murdering children and yeah, I'm with that. I'm totally fine with that. So death to the IOF and any sick fuck that supports that. Seriously. It's the fact that they're still, it's just, you keep trying to conflate Judaism and Zionism and the death cult. Keep doing that. Fly, Icarus, fly.
And you couldn't have predicted the outcome to be any different than what it ultimately ended up being as a result. After Glastonbury, Bob Vylan faces UK criminal investigation and US visa revocation, which has already happened. Leave it right there, Colin, for a second. I want people to see this image. It sure looks to me like the crowd really loves this guy and really appreciates what he was saying. The people who did not appreciate what he was saying are the powers that be. See, the people there are with Palestine. You don't see any Israeli flags flying there.
No. And what you're seeing is, and I don't know if you've been seeing some of this stuff coming out of Greece, where the shop owners and the regular, even the government's clearly they're our bitch, but the people there are putting up signs saying you're not welcome here. Israelis not welcome here. But
Absolutely.
no, clearly we see where the sentiment of the public is. And you know what? You're revoking his visa. I don't know, where is he from?
Well, he sounds like he's from the UK.
Well, okay, whatever it is. So you're revoking his visa from here. Talk about threatening somebody with a good time.
Good time. Yeah, really. Talk about a guy who now is going to have even more cred in terms of...
You just created him to be, like, I would have never known this duo. It's not a guy, it's a duo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But clearly Bobby Vylan was definitely onto something when he went forward with this decision that he put out there. And kudos to him. But here's the thing. And if you scroll down a little bit, we'll address it even further. But yes, his U.S. visa has been revoked. The BBC and the annual Glastonbury Festival of Contemporary Performing Arts have come under criticism from the British Prime Minister, shocking, Keir Starmer is such a scumbag, and broadcasting regulator after a punk rap band led chants against the Israeli military during a festival performance, which was broadcast live on Saturday afternoon. British punk rap duo Bob Vylan is now under a criminal investigation in the UK after its lead singer chanted "Death, death to the IDF." The performance was streamed by the BBC on its iPlayer service. Within seconds, the broadcaster added an on-screen warning for viewers about, what the frick, about very strong and discriminatory language. I didn't know we were in the business of protecting the IDF. But top politicians, of course, criticized the broadcaster's decision to air the performance, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who said that it contained appalling hate language, or hate speech. It's hate speech to speak out against the...
Well, yeah. What's my position on hate speech, though? So
it's still free speech.
Exactly. So let's say, okay, Keir, stipulated. It's hate speech. Your point? We're allowed to hate people that are murderers. That's the thing. I don't care that it's hate speech. It's hateful. We feel hateful.
We should.
Yes.
You don't feel hateful towards Israel and the IDF, then you're not human as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. We should feel hateful. It is hate speech.
Remember, on paper, 377,000 Palestinians are unaccounted for. That is basically 20% of the Palestinian population. You're going to tell me that's not a genocide? We're going to get to
so it's like you're talking about hate speech like that somehow is the issue. No, if you're more offended by hate speech in this capacity than you are by dead babies, yeah, you're the problem. That's the problem.
One opposition lawmaker, Chris Phillip, called the BBC to be prosecuted. The Conservative member of Parliament wrote on X, by broadcasting his vile hatred, the BBC appear to have also broke the law.
Don't do it. You always make them sound like just so pansy-ish.
Well, they are pansies.
No, because I think of like James Bond. So stop.
Well, our nation.
Or Idris Elba, I have a thing. But I'm just saying, like, there's nothing pansy about that man.
Transmitting hateful material designed to incite violence and conflict. In a statement on Monday, the BBC said it regretted not pulling away from of course they did.
Oh, I bet.
Pulling away from the live stream. It's anti-Semitic to speak out against the idea. Okay, well, there you go. The anti-Semitic sentiments expressed by Bob Vylan were utterly unacceptable, and added that it respects freedom of expression but stands firmly against incitement to violence. The broadcaster has already decided not to broadcast the Glastonbury performance of Irish-language hip-hop band Kneecap, which apparently was going to do something very similar.
Right. That's why it's glorious.
Mm-hmm. So, in retrospect, this has become a couple of things. And there's another layer to this story, which I'm not sure is going to be mentioned here. If you could scroll down a little bit more, Colin, please. I don't need to read what Starmer has to say.
It was not appropriate. Yes. No, you see what's not appropriate is killing people. That's not appropriate. That's really what's inappropriate. And that's what's really the most offensive thing here.
Bob Vylan was due to perform in the U.S. later this year, but the Glastonbury appearance will have repercussions for the band's tour plans. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau wrote on X the members of Bob Vylan would have their visas revoked, adding foreigners who glorify violence and hatred are not welcome visitors in our country.
Oh, but Nettie Hoo gets to come here and Ben Gvir gets to come here.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think of anybody glorifying violence more than those two pieces of shit.
Glastonbury Festival organizers say they are appalled by comments made by Bob that say that across the line, of course, because everybody gets their shit in line. Now, here's the little dirty secret about this particular event that nobody's talking about, but is actually very pertinent to the story. If you don't know who Jerry Zimmer is, you will now. Jerry Zimmer is the CEO of United Talent Agency, which represents Bob Vylan. They have dropped them from their label, which happened earlier today. What's the little caveat about Jerry Zimmer? Well, he's a major backer of Israel. That's number one. And number two, he is the grandson of the chief, of the former studio chief of Metro Goldwyn Mayer, which is one of the original MGM. It's one of the original major studios in all of Hollywood.
Mayer.
Yes, Metro Mayer. Wait,
Metro Goldwyn Mayer.
I said Retro Goldwyn Mayer. I said Mayer. Oh, Mayer, tomato, same thing. Point being is that if this guy could be any more of a Nepo baby, I don't see how it's possible. But we're not done yet, because there's a reason why this came out and why it's such a big deal. Colin, if you will, the story from Haaretz. Just a day prior to this event, it was an expose released by Haaretz, the primary print media source in the entire country of Israel.
And by the way, it's pretty being pro-Israel. If they're saying something negative in any way about Israel, it's 10 times true. Because they never say, that's the thing. They're very biased. So yeah.
It is a killing field. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid, mind you, that we talked about on Saturday, that's being laced with oxycodone. IDF officers and soldiers told Haaretz they were ordered to fire at unarmed crowds near food distribution sites in Gaza, even when no threat was present. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, prompting the military prosecution to call for a review into possible war crimes? No, it's how many war crimes. That's what the statement should read. Netanyahu and Katz reject, of course they reject claims, call them blood libels. That's what they continue to say. Keep scrolling down, please. Israeli soldiers. Oh, we don't have access to the story, Colin? Is that the issue?
You got paywalled.
Yeah. Oh, we got paywalled.
Yeah, it's a paywall.
No, that's fine. But at the end of the day, these soldiers have been documenting their own war crimes for almost 2 years.
And so, all you have to do,
it's so apparent that it shouldn't even need to be we don't need to read about what they said.
Have to, honestly, congratulations, Haaretz. You actually made yourself look even stupider, because the only sentence that matters is the first one that you didn't block. Israeli soldiers in Gaza told Haaretz that the army has deliberately fired at Palestinians near aid distribution sites over the past month. Death to the IDF.
Well, first of all, that entire organization, what's it called? The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is a fake, it's a front. It's a combination of mercenaries and other disgusting contractors that were brought in to basically perform the final solution. That's where this is going. They're building the corrals and they're corralling people. This is the final solution. This is where this is headed. And it was always going to be that, because if they ever had any intention of aid, see, again, the whole concept of allowing aid into some place that you've bombed to the point beyond 100 Hiroshimas, the concept of letting aid in, if you think about it, is just the best way to help people is stop killing them. So you got to start there. If you're not going to stop killing them, the idea of you're letting in some aid just doesn't, it seems a little disingenuous to me. So the fact that they're doing it in the capacity that they're doing it with aid organization that isn't really an aid organization, but is filled with contractors and mercenary soldiers, that's a sign. They're not really letting in actual food that starving people need. Forget the fact that it's been laced with oxycodone. But, even if it weren't, they're not giving food that actual real aid distribution food organizations would be giving, that know how to deal with people in crisis and in malnutrition. Giving people that are starving cans of beans, that's not helping. That's not helping. So they never had the intention of helping. That organization was designed to come in for the final solution.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. So
let them continue to bury themselves where they stand. It just can't come fast enough. And from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Free Palestine.
We can't thank you guys enough for coming on this evening. As always, we did have a few more super chats. We obviously want to implore that if you guys haven't currently gone over to patreon.com/revolutionary change for as little as $5 a month, you could become a supporter of our small but mighty and growing channel. As it stands right now, when we went live the other night, we were sitting at 43,800 subscribers. Now we are at 44,263 subscribers.
Peter watches it by the minute.
I have to. It's exciting. We're actually going places, Jen.
We're
we
going
might be able
places.
to afford a hot meal every once in a while. That's a nifty little trick. But for those of you that are here, we obviously, again, can't thank you enough for your very generous support. It really does mean a lot. And so with that said, if you have contributed, thank you so much. Mark J, thank you for the $2. You deserve the channel growth. Thank you. Mark J, thank you. You've been a tremendous contributor of our channel on a regular basis, and we really appreciate it. Progressive Lefty, member for 4 months. Always appreciate you being here, my friend. The world needs more people like Kshama. Yeah, unfortunately, she's an anomaly rather than the norm.
More Shamas, less AOC Pelosi's.
Agree with that. Victoria P, thank you so much for the $6.99 Canadian A. Jeff Bezos' wedding was gross display of capitalism. It was just a gross display, period. And the
It was
fact
so
that
disgusting. And they purposefully did it there so that it would be a display. They did it in a place where all the celebrities had to be seen because it's the only way you can transport there is on boats. So they purposefully picked a place that already has people that are living in dire straits because of like complete equity takeover and Airbnbs and all this shit that the people that live in Venice can't afford to live there. They picked that place on purpose.
Shocking.
For that. Yeah.
And of course, apparently the tab was like $50 million.
Which, by the way, if you do the math proportionate to all of us, it really isn't that much that he spent on his own wedding, quite honestly. But the problem is that none of that money went to small businesses in Venice and mom and pops and local people and craftsmen and cooks and bakers. No, it went to all big international hotel type chains and the like. That's it. They didn't help any of the small people there. All those people had their lives disrupted for how many days?
Hey.
For circus. And by the way, and I saw something about this. The amount of silicone and plastic fillers on the guests at this party, the damage that can do to like the water system there. I never saw so much plastic like in one place.
Well, they're all fake to begin with, so might as well go the full Monty.
They're so gross.
Willie Bragg, thank you so much as always for your support. And guys, make sure you subscribe to the Willie Bragg Show on YouTube. Woodrow Wilson and George W. Bush were the worst presidents in my view. Yeah, listen, it's the bottom five. Who do you want your bottom five? I've got Wilson, I've got LBJ, I've got W, I've got Andrew Johnson, and I don't know.
I think they all suck, but
there's different levels of suck, Jen.
And a lot of it has to do on timing and circumstance. I would say that we've been on this shit trajectory and it hasn't mattered one bit who's been in there this entire time since I've been alive. It really doesn't make a difference. We're still heading in a capitalist shit show direction. That's the direction we're headed. Oh God, she's like decomposing by the day.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, the Venetians were pissed off and offended. They were protesting. I kept seeing floating Bezos model mannequins floating in different dead configurations in the canals. They put up signs. They gave him a hard time. They ended up having to change their venue. The venue that they were originally going to have was more central, and they ended up having to move it to this whole private, like gated community type of place because. And look, I'm glad. Good for Venice for showing up because it's disgusting, truthfully.
Joseph George, thank you so much for the $5. We like the rebrand as well. I think it's actually been really good. I really enjoy the rebrand. Right now, the way that Jen and I have discussed, the way it's going to be going forward is Mondays and Thursdays. We will do our regular show. On Saturday, I am going to continue pontificating with Pete. I will do a solo show 3 times a month One of those shows, Jen is going to join, and we will do the monthly call-in, but it's going to be live. So you guys are all going to be able to be here to see it. Maybe we'll even do it this Saturday since we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, we'll do it so it'll be available for members, either Patreon members or YouTube members, to be able to call in and ask questions, chat, whatever.
Yeah. And so with that said, we really appreciate you all being here this evening. Thursday night, we will have our good friend, Jamal Thomas, who is overseas, but it's going to work out perfectly time-wise.
He's in Albania.
He's in Albania. He's becoming Albanian. So
I don't think that's how that works.
I know. But with that said, we really appreciate you all being here. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you share. Make sure you are subscribed if you are new, and do all those things that we ask you to do. We cannot thank you enough. The growth has been incredible. We got over 300 live viewers tonight. So it's, like I said, it's very gratifying. And we thank you all for being here as always. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. We'll see you Thursday. And
Free Palestine.
good night, guys.